What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the second part of a story where Issei became the red and white dragon and joined the Avengers. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Also, this is a translate version, you may find some mistakes, specifically in the character's gender. Issei of course is a male, this time no changes in the genders. Now, let's get into part 2. After that little chat between them, they went to the other leaders who asked them what happened. They only answered one thing. We knew each other better. After a little chat between them, the wedding began. Issei sat in the front row along with Nick, Nat and Steve. Well, we are here gathered to unite two clans. That although they had problems at the beginning, are now happy. The clans that will now unite in marriage are the Phoenix and Gremory clans, said Michael since he was the one in charge of this. If anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace, said Michael, and no one moved or raised their hand, so the wedding continued. Fine, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. And so Razor took Riaz as his wife and gave her a passionate kiss. Issei had an empty look as if nothing mattered to him. Nat saw him and saw in the depths of both eyes two dragons that gave her fear, terror. They were ready to kill their prey, and that was it. For Riaz Gremory and Razor Phoenix. A voice was heard in the background for everyone to applaud. Then they went to the room where the party would be. Inside the room, the DJ began to play soft songs for couples, then Zeordicus, the Gremory patriarch, spoke. Okay, all men to the dance floor please, said the patriarch, and everyone went except the leaders and Steve, since he did not want to dance. Well, we will have an activity, my daughter will dance with each of you, but she will do it with her eyes closed, and when the last one arrives, he has to return her to her husband, said Zeordicus. Issei just had a cold, empty look and accepted because Nat asked him just for that. The dances began and Riaz danced with her father and brother, then she passed by her cousin Sararog and several noble demons, and lastly Issei arrived. Riaz felt a warmth that she only felt with Issei, both danced to the rhythm of the song, soft and firm but at the same time full of emotions that came out with that dance by Issei. He was leaving that part that loved Riaz while she enjoyed that warmth, but a small whisper brought her back to reality. This means the end for us but you, said Issei. Then he returned Riaz to her husband and walked away from there and sat with Nat, who looked at him with a smile that made her look pretty. Riaz swore to hear Issei's voice, and at that moment, she remembered. What has she done? The only person who loved her with all her flaws forgot her and left her, now she feels like an idiot. The dance, son, Steve said, putting a hand on Issei's shoulder. Excuse me, miss, do you want to go dance with me? Said a noble demon with a lustful face. Issei saw that and got up, took Nat by the hand and took her to another place. It seems that your son is jealous, Nick said with grace. Oh. Shut up, Fury, Steve said with grace upon seeing Issei. On the dance floor Nat was blushing and happy. Because Issei took her to dance and was taking her possessively. When the dance ended, Issei and Nat were going to sit down, but when Nat was leaving, Issei took her by the hand and stopped her. Her eyes were covered by her hair. He attracted Nat to him and gave her a kiss on the mouth, something that surprised Nat, but it did not take long to reciprocate the kiss. That kiss was to make it clear that she was his and no one else's, and if they touched her, she would die. Riaz, Asia, Kaneko, Irina, Zenovi and Ravel felt bad for some reason, seeing the stranger to them kissing another woman other than them. Sona for some reason was the same, and she didn't understand why. Issei separated from the kiss a little, blushed, and so did Nat. Both were breathing heavily. Nat covered herself in Issei's chest to hide her embarrassment. Issei hugged her lovingly. Inside Issei's mind. I told you. Now white pays, said Drake. Okay. But I bet he doesn't take her to bed in 2 months, said Albion, paying with golden apples. Ha. It's another bet, Albion, said Drake. Out of Issei's mind. Damn, I wasn't expecting that, Nick said. I got the reference, Steve said. They both went to sit holding hands. Nick just applauded them when they arrived. Well, looks like there's a couple here, Nick said with a smile. If you'll excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom, Nat said as she left for the bathroom. Wow, the boy conquered the Ice Queen in just a few days, Steve said. I'm going to dance. I'll be right back, Issei said as he left and saw his dance partner. Excuse me, Miss Akeno, may I have this piece? Issei said, and Akeno reacted to those words. Sure, Akeno said as she took Issei's hand and led her to the dance floor. How are you, honey? Issei said in a whisper. Well, I'll be promoted to upper class in a week, you can go if you want, Akeno said in a whisper. Of course I wouldn't miss it for anything, after that ceremony you will come to live with me, said Issei. Really? Akeno said. Of course you are my fiancé anyway, Issei said simply. Then the song ended and everyone went to sit down and Nat hadn't come back. For some reason Issei felt bad. Had he done the right thing? Then the last song of the night played and everyone took partners except for a girl with glasses, violet eyes and short black hair. Issei approached her and offered her his hand. She accepted and they went to the dance floor. "What's wrong, Kaicho?" Issei said, surprising Sona. "Who are you?" Sona said seriously. "Wow, you forgot so quickly about the leader of the perverted trio," said Issei pretending sadness. "Issei?" I shouted in his ear. "Ouch." "Sona, don't shout," said Issei covering his ear. "I'm sorry," Sona said in a whisper. "What are you doing here? I thought you went to Tokyo," said Sona. "I'm actually here with a human fraction, but tell me one thing. Did you hear what happened in New York?" Issei asked amused. "If Loki and Haryukyo. Don't tell me they were there," said Sona. "Of course. After all, he and I had unfinished business," said Issei. "Wow, I didn't expect that," Sona said surprised. Issei took a long sigh and spoke. "Do you want to go on a date with me on Friday?" Issei said. "Of course, after college," Sona said nervously and a little red. "Well, until then," Issei said to turn Sona so that she was facing him while he wrapped his arms around Sona's waist. Sona at that moment felt loved and protected at the same time. And then when she felt happy. The song ended and Issei left her in her seat holding her hand. "Boy, you're not wasting any time," Steve said. "Steve, accept it, the boy is becoming a man," said Nick. Haven't you seen that?" said Issei. "He said he was coming home and that he'd meet us at the helicopter," Steve said, downplaying the matter. "Well, since the wedding is over, let's go to the meeting," said Nick. "It was about time I was falling asleep out of boredom," said the dragons in Issei's mind. "You guys always sleep. I don't understand how you reach the celestial rank," said Issei, making the dragon snort. "It was because we both trained until exhaustion and in our fight we stopped being dragon kings and were promoted to celestials," said Albion. "Wait, they were dragon kings," Issei said surprised. "Of course we were, how do you think I get along so well with Tannen?" said Drake. "Let's talk about this later," Issei said. After that little talk, the leaders and their bodyguards went to the room where the meeting would take place. Nick had left earlier to create suspense. It's always the same with him. Issei and Steve were hiding their presence and Nick's so they would believe that there was no one in the room, and since it was dark, that worked for the atmosphere that Nick wanted. "Remember that my name is Sato," said Issei leaning against the wall. After a few minutes, footsteps were heard towards the room. They turned on the light and saw the three representatives of the human faction. The leaders saw them with a powerful aura that did not affect them at all. Along with them were the retinue Citri, Aegers, Bale, Gremory, Phoenix, with their heirs respectively. "Welcome to our meeting," Nick said with a smile. The leaders sighed as they wanted to look like powerful beings before the humans, but they were not fazed by their presence. They took their seats, and the meeting began. Straight to the point. "We want you to join the fractions," said Azazel. "Why?" "Because we went to war against a god and we won, and it's better to have us as allies than as enemies," said Nick. "Ha ha ha ha. I like this guy," said Odin laughing. "You know we offer you protection and magical and technological advances," Ajuka said. "We offer them protection from ourselves," Nick said with a smile. "Of you?" said the Bale heir. "That's how it is, at least here. I count 5 of ours, and I'm not going to mention names. And in the leaders' groups there are 2 in each entourage, except for the fallen one. He is trustworthy," said Nick pointing at Azazel. "Sato, evaluate all the kings of the entourages out loud please," said Nick looking at Issei. "The Gremory heiress, Ria's Gremory, has the power of destruction, but it is unstable since she never trained it and depends on the strength of her deer to win, and especially the Sekiryuite," said Issei pointing at Ria's. "Serog Bale, heir to the house of the great king, without the power that is inherited from his house, his strength of a supreme class, with his armor and pawn, Regulus. A longinus that took its own form. Does not depend on anyone to finish off his enemy," said Issei pointing to his old rival. "Sona Citri, great strategist, however she relies too much on that. Her strategy since the game Gremory Citri was clearly at a disadvantage since having the Sekiryuite in its balance break was a danger and forced her to surrender when she saw herself without servants," said Issei looking at Sona. "Sikvaria Aegers, another strategist, a prodigy in strategies, but like Gremory. Without her servant she is nothing," said Issei looking at Sikvaria. "Razor Phoenix. Arrogant, stupid and confident, the center of his group strategies is his younger sister Ravel Phoenix, both boast of their immortality when it is only an accelerated regeneration," said Issei. "How dare you talk about me like that?" said Riaz. "Easy," It's because the day I went to your house to talk to my fiancé, you tempted me when you saw your selfish attitude, and also that I defeated your servants as if it were nothing," said Issei. "I knew I'd see you again, jerk," said Zero. "He visited Ria's and defeated her servants," Surziches said. "Not everyone. Since we had a problem called Loki," said Nick. "What do you mean, fiancé?" Ria said angrily. "As you hear, Akeno Himigia is my fiancé," Issei said and approached Akeno and gave her a kiss on the lips, something she did not deny and reciprocated. "She is Issei's fiancé," Ria said annoyed. "Just like you. Right," Issei said, mocking Ria's. Ria's felt a discomfort in her chest when he told her that. However, she recovered quickly. She was going to speak, but Issei interrupted her before she started. "And do not say anything since Issei declared his love for you on multiple occasions, defended you from the marriage of that fried chicken, from Kakabiel, from a treacherous attack by Vali Lucifer the previous Haryukyo, led you to victory on multiple occasions, and so you pay him by marrying the first idiot he saved you from and you," said Issei pointing to the others. "You also do not intercede for your king since you are others, Asia Argento, for you fell in the Juggernaut drive and almost died, Zenobia Quarta for you faced all those who wanted to harm you. Hineko told you he helped you accept what you were and prevented Kuroka from taking you with her, Ravel Phoenix he was crazy looking for you when you were kidnapped, Irina Shiudo he promised you that he would help your father from Yamada no Arachi and he did. And how did they pay him back? By betraying him. You don't know the pain that all of you caused him. Come on, talk, tell me, said Issei, shedding a few tears. And if you happen to see him, don't be surprised that he ignores all of you, since he saw you all with your partners. You don't know what happened to him. You probably don't even know where he is," said Issei. "Calm down son, I know it hurts you. But don't be rough with him," Steve said in Issei's ear, but he heard something that was the straw that broke the camel's back. "Do you think we love Haidu Issei?" Ria said passing by. "Well, we don't love him, we just use him. When I reincarnated him, after that full-in-one killed him, I saw in him his long-eyeness and used it to get Razor off of me, but he was pathetic, he was weak and a big pervert, and the only one who fell in love with Issei was Akeno. What we did with him was to keep him close because of his power, that was the only thing I wanted from him," said Riaz arrogantly while Surziches looked at her in astonishment. Riaz, I'm disappointed in you, I'll talk to dad and mom about this," said Surziches. "I changed my mind. As their leader you have my permission to kill them," said Steve. "You don't know who you're in front of, right?" said Issei while a magic circle surrounded him and showed his old appearance. Everyone in the room was speechless. Issei was there, his hair blocking his gaze and in his hand the boosted gear, which was shining a deep red. Boost. Drake's voice was heard in the room as Issei released his aura, and when Drake increased it the entire Grimoire entourage, except Akeno, Kiba, Zero, Ryu and Gasper, fell to the ground. The aura was so heavy that the leaders were amazed, they had never seen such an aura so huge. "Repeat what you said." Issei's voice changed and gave everyone a great chill. Since it seemed like he had died and there was nothing inside him. "Come on, repeat what you told me." "Easy bitch," Issei said again and Surziches was about to speak, but Issei's voice stopped him. "You move to defend the bitch and you die, and if you do an apostrophe T believe me look next to your chair." Surziches fearfully did so and saw a magic circle with the attainment of infinity pointing at his face, and from the aura he was accumulating, it was clear that he would not resist the attack, even with his destruction mode. "It goes the same for everyone except Odin, in whom I trust," said Issei while they take out Ascalon. Boost. Transfer. Ascalon's aura gave a monstrous increase, with her aura she hurt whoever came near her. "I hide Issei as the candidate for Dragon God, condemn Uriah's Grimoire to suffer as punishment for the fall of the dragon." Then Issei made several slashes in the air, and then all of the Grimoire group fell. Except Akeno, Kiba and Gasper, Zero and Ryu, they saw the brutality. Steve did nothing, he just saw what they deserved and enjoyed it. He saw how Issei did justice. Nick also did nothing, even though the leaders yelled at him to do something, but they couldn't avoid his punishment. When Issei finished his punishment, he told them what he did. They won't be able to have children, and if they do have them they will die instantly after leaving their womb. The curse will last until they die naturally, said Issei as he walked away with Steve. "So, are we going to sign the peace or not?" said Nick. "Peace between the Asgardians and the humans is made," said Odin. "Peace on the part of the Yokai is made," said Yusaka. "Peace for the fallen is made," said Azazel. "Peace has been made by the angels," said Michael. "I, as one of the 4 kings of the underworld, declare that peace has been made for the demons," said Ajuka. "How dare you do that to my wife?" Razor said as he launched a fireball, but it didn't reach him because Issei stopped it by taking out his dragon wings. "If you don't want to die, it's better that you shut up, being inferior," said Issei while closing his eyes. Ha. Yes, I beat you up the first time we met. Razor said arrogantly. Silence. Everyone saw that voice and saw that it was Serziches who was emanating an aura of death. Serziches. Calm down. Ajuka said. Serziches-chan, be careful. Said Serafal. How am I going to calm down when this? Said Serziches, but did not continue since Issei had him lifted from his chair, strangling him. Continue that sentence and it will be the last one you say. Said Issei while the dragon features on his face became more visible. Issei, please. Nick said as Issei released Serziches and left him on the ground. Issei left the room, slamming the doors, and went to the patio. Steve. Go get him. Said Nick looking at Steve, who nodded and left. Sona wanted to go, along with Akeno and Momo. To support Issei, since for them he was someone valuable. Besides, they fear that he will cause some disaster and they want to avoid it. You guys go too, Steve can't do it alone. He said so they would go after Steve. So, can we go now? Nick said with a smile. Why did you let him do that to them? Said Azazel. For the same reason you study sacred gears. You can't have a dragon tied up, or wasn't that the case with Folly Lucifer? Nick said with his classic smile. I have a question, can we visit Issei Otusama? Said little Kunu, making everyone laugh nervously and Yusaka blush furiously. Only if he wants it, Princess Kunu. Said Nick watching the girl pout adorably. Outside that meeting was Haidu Issei trying not to destroy the entire mansion. When he found himself in the courtyard, he started to cry. Was he just a toy for them and they don't value him? Apparently Rainer was right, they were never going to love him and that they only sought his power for their own benefit. Come on, partner, don't think about that. Albion told him. Issei, come on, don't be depressed. You look better with a smile than with a sad face. Said Drake in a sympathetic tone. Issei, I'm going to tell you the story of why Tiamat hates me. Drake said, sighing. After that friendly meeting between his ex-harem, Issei went outside the mansion and made a magic circle to get out of the underworld. He teleported to the place where it all started for him. Kuo City Park. It was nighttime, and he just took wandering steps until he reached the fountain where his girlfriend killed him, and then he saw her sitting cross-legged watching him. I told you that only I would love you. That's why I killed you. So that they would N''T hurt you. Said the Rainer Mirage. Or so that she wouldn't hurt you. Issei said, sitting next to her. He got over her months ago. Come on Issei, tell me that I did N''T even do the best for you. Rainer continued speaking. Just like I let the crimson bitch kill you. Issei said, causing the specter to snort. You know you are very bad with your girlfriend. Said Rainer. I thought when you killed me it was considered a breakup. Issei said. When Rainer's specter was going to answer, Issei heard a beautiful voice and went after her. Then he saw on the other side of the fountain, and there was a purple-haired girl with blue eyes, and it seemed like she had been sleeping because her eyes were sleepy, as if she had just woken up from a long dream. 4. She was humming a melody that brought peace to Issei for some reason. He stood behind her to continue listening to the melody. Apparently she realized that and saw him. Please continue, it gives me peace. Said Issei, causing his dragon features to begin to disappear. She just nodded and continued with the melody. Issei just let himself be carried away by the music and closed his eyes. Partner, be careful. I feel many demonic presences nearby. Said Drake in Issei's mind. Wow. Doesn't seem to be upper class. Said a voice in the park forest. Excuse me? Issei said in a bitter tone. You're weak, you don't seem to be a high-class person anymore. Let us take the girl and we will let you live. Said the arrogant voice. Welsh dragon balance break. If before Issei was starting to calm down, now he will do it by killing this guy. Well, the latter looked at him with fear. He didn't know where he had gotten so much power. Issei flew out with his fist raised ready to hit him in the face, something that the guy narrowly dodged. Issei deactivated the gloves on his armor and began to draconify his hands, and from them came out a pair of claws. At first glance it was clear that they were sharp. Issei moved his hand quickly and scratched him in the chest, which sent him back. You know, it was a good idea not to come alone after all. Said the voice, snapping his fingers so that several magic circles came out of the ground, and from them came several demons. Of high class due to the power they emanate. Suddenly several spheres of magic came against him, and he repelled them with just his hands. When all the demons surrounded him, he made 2 magic circles, and from there 2 oriental dragons came out. One was blue, and the other was black. What do you want? Father? Said one of the dragons looking at Issei. Kill them all and leave no evidence. Issei said, crossing his arms. As you command, father. Said the black dragon. Beware. Both dragons let out a roar and began to release blue and black flames, incinerating their enemies. After a few minutes there was no one left, only Issei and the 2 dragons. Tell Reyes and Kira that I will soon go see my grandchildren, and I expect grandchildren from both of them too," said Issei, surprising both dragons. "When you arrive," said the blue dragon. "Then I still have matters to resolve," said Issei to open the portal again. "See you later, father," said both dragons as they passed through the portal. Issei began to walk to where he was before to look for the girl, but she was no longer there. Apparently she fled at the time of the fight. Well, since there was nothing to do, he went to sit down. "Wow, I didn't think you had kids," Steve said, looking at Issei. "They're not mine, I adopted them when I saw them, they were just babies and they were defenseless, and I took care of them until they grew up," said Issei, walking next to Steve. "Let's go back to the meeting, Nick is sure to be furious," Steve said. "So for some strange reason Issei is not at risk of the dragon's fall," said Azazel. "Yes, he doesn't run the risk of dying for love, and he confused love with admiration," said Nick. "Look at it this way, he was grateful to Reyes for saving him and freeing her from Razor's commitment, to Asia for being her friend and saving her from the fallen rebel, and when the clone of the son of the Mao Beelzebub killed her, he killed him twice, and so with the others, he was grateful to them for being special people to him, and he mistook it for love," said Nick. "Wow. Where do they get so much information about what happened?" said Azazel. "Azazel. He is the most powerful human I have ever seen, and without moving a finger he can destroy us on a personal level. If what he says is true, if he had wanted it, we would already be dead," said Odin while taking Gugner. "Don't be so dramatic. You just have to make one call and that's it," said Nick, laughing along with the father of all. "That shows that humans are not to be trifled with," Yusaka said. "Okasama, where is Issei Otusama?" Kunu said. "Here I am, Kunu-chan," said Issei, appearing at the door, seeing everyone and how the Grimoire writhed in pain and sighed. "Blade." Ascalon came out of Issei's glove again and began to cut the air above the Grimoire, and they slowly stopped suffering. "What I just did is remove the curse from you. Don't think that you'll be able to have children just like that. You'll have to spend 100 years with the person you want children with. Let's say I am doing you a favor," said Issei in a deep voice. "Thanks, Issei-kun," said Surziches, to which guess what? Issei completely ignored him and walked past and went to Nick's side. "The Arasitri is looking for you, Issei," Nick said, looking at Issei. "Mao Beelzebub, I need to speak to you in private after the meeting," said Issei, looking at Ajuka. "Of course, Issei," Ajuka said. Then Kunu approached Issei and pulled his arm sleeve. "What's wrong, Kunu-chan?" said Issei, looking at the kitsune. "When will you marry Okasama?" said Kunu. "Kunu?" said a blushing Yusaka. "When she decides," said Issei, thinking it was a game, but what he didn't know was that Yusaka had feelings for him, and that was like an indirect confession. "Well, the meeting is over, thank you all for attending," Surziches said seriously. "Thank you, Lucifer-sama," Issei said coldly, walking towards Mao Ajuka. "Issei, we'll be waiting for you outside," Steve said, looking at Issei. "Don't be late, we'll talk to the Grimoire and Phoenix Patriarchs while you talk to Beelzebub," said Nick before leaving for the Phoenix Mansion. "Ajuka-sama, we proceed to our meeting," said Issei, so that the green-haired man nodded and they went to his office. "Ajuka-sama, there is a way to take away Aria's new servants, along with her knight and bishop," Issei said seriously. "Of course, you will only proceed to inform them that they are now part of your entourage and that they are still at their lower class level," said Ajuka. "Could you do it?" Issei said in a pleading tone. "Give me the pieces to exchange," said Ajuka, so that Issei gave him the 8 pawns and a knight and a bishop. Ajuka made a magic circle while doing some calculations at high speed, so that after a few seconds the pieces stopped glowing and showed crimson pieces instead of white and red ones like Issei's. "Congratulations, you now have 4 servants in your peerage," said Ajuka. "Thanks, by the way. Can you promote Akeno faster, please?" said Issei. "Of course, the promotion will be in a few days. If you agree," said Ajuka. "Besides, we have to tell Ria-san that she doesn't even have 4 servants anymore." "Well, we have to inform them," Issei said with a malicious smile. Nick and Steve were in a room talking to the Grimoire and Phoenix Patriarchs, giving good wishes to the newlyweds and Kirsten Ria's case, when suddenly a magic circle came out of the ground, revealing Issei with a smile and Ajuka just like him. "Good evening, Patriarchs of the Grimoire Pillar and the Phoenix Pillar." The aforementioned lowered their heads in greeting. "Zero, Ryu, Kiba, Gasper, come with me. With your true king," said Issei with a sinister smile. Kiba and Gasper went without putting any objections. "What do you mean, true king?" Ria said, getting up from her chair. "Unfortunately, Ria-san, 4 of your servants have been stripped from you due to the statement you made at the peace meeting, and they have been given to an appropriate person," said Ajuka. "Before you say anything, I made this decision not as Ajuka Astareth, but as Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the 4 kings of the underworld." Ajuka said to take out his demon wings. "Guys, come with me," said Issei, stretching out his arms in a hug. Why would we go with you? Zero said distrustfully. For me, they won't be tools, they will be my friends. My family, said Issei, so that Ryu began to walk next to Kiba and Gasper. Think about it, Zero. Let's give it a chance, said Ryu. Well, from today we are in your care, Issei-sama, said Zero with annoyance. No, Sama, please just. Issei, it's okay, Issei said. How dare you take my servants away from me? Rhea said, drawing out a bit of the power of destruction. Rhea's. You know that just because I have lessened the curse doesn't mean that I forgive you, so it's better. Either you shut up or you die. It's your decision, said Issei, releasing a bit of draconic power that scared those present. I challenge you to a rating game. The winner asks the loser for anything and he won't be able to refuse. Rhea shouted furiously. In a week we will meet then, Issei said macabrely. In that game he will embarrass her. I, Ajuka Beelzebub, will be the referee of the game. I expect fair play from both sides and that the best man wins, Ajuka said as he left as he came. Well, time to go home, said Issei, making a magic circle to go to the Helicarger. When they arrived at the Helicarger, everyone went to their rooms except the new members of Issei's group. Since he had bought a house in New York, they went to stay in that house with Issei. Since he did not want to spend much time in the Helicarger. Issei-kun, when do we start training? Kiba said. In 2 days we will go to the dimension where Office trained me, said Issei, remembering that he still has to continue with his training. Choose where to sleep and in the last free room. I will sleep there, said Issei as he sat down on an armchair and turned on the television. Okay, let's go, said Zero and Ryu to walk to explore the house and see which room to choose. Although the house was simple, the rooms, not so much. Since the house can be camouflaged with magic. Then the doorbell rang and Issei went to open the door and saw Nat coming with some suitcases, and outside the room was her car. What's wrong, Nat? Said Issei, looking at Nat curiously. Fury sent me here since it seems like something is going to happen and he doesn't want me to interfere, Nat said, blushing since she asked to stay at Issei's house. In that case, please come in, said Issei, letting Nat in. When Nat entered, all of Issei's peerage arrived and looked curiously at the woman as she looked shy and blushing. Kiba sighed. Issei just left one harem and is already moving on to another. Boy, he doesn't waste any time. Kiba Yudo nigd by Issei-kun. A pleasure, said Kiba, bowing. Ryu and Zero Miyuk pawns of Issei, said the Miyuk brothers. Gasper? Vladi Bishop from Issei-senpai, said Gasper, hiding in the box. What a group you got yourself, Nat said, looking at everyone. Natasha Romanoff, nice to meet you, said Nat, dropping her bags. Eyes, from today Nat is going to come live with us, so I hope you get along, said Issei. You have already chosen your rooms. There's only one room left, Kiba said. Fine, Nat, you will sleep there, I will sleep on the couch, Issei said as he sat down. Well, that being said, today has been a hectic day and it would be best to go to sleep, so get some rest, Issei said, smiling. Then they all went to their rooms. Issei took Nat to where he was supposed to sleep and closed the door so she could change in peace. Although he was tempted to see Nat's body, but he went to the couch to sleep, but not before going to have a glass of milk. It was always his favorite. He took a couple of cushions from the other couches and used them as pillows. While that was happening in the room where Nat would sleep, the aforementioned was changing, but when she lay down she thought about Issei and that kiss. What did that kiss mean? She was confused. Seeing Issei's kindness and giving her the room where he was going to sleep made her think of him. She took courage and took a sheet and went where Issei was sleeping in the living room, his eyes already closed and he was sleeping peacefully. As best she could, she approached without dying of embarrassment and lay on top of him using his chest as a pillow. It gave off a great warmth. Now she sees why they slept on top of him before, and curiously, he didn't mind it in the least, and rather he settled down and put his arms around Nat's waist, hugging her. He blushed at his sudden action, but did nothing to push him away, rather he snuggled up closer to him. Good night, Issei, said Nat to give him a kiss on the cheek. The next morning, Issei was sleeping peacefully when an enemy for everyone took him by surprise. The sun, a few rays of it passed through the window and hit Issei in the face. He woke up sleepily and moved his hand, but there was a sound that woke him up faster than the sun. Ah, said a voice in his chest. He opened his eyes as quickly as he could and saw Nat sleeping on top of him with a sheet covering her body. What the hell? Issei shouted, waking up Nat and the others in the residence. What happened? Said Nat, rubbing her honey-colored eyes. Good morning, Issei, said Nat, getting up and giving Issei a kiss on the cheek, which made him blush a little at the sudden approach to his face. By the way, thanks for letting me sleep with you last night, said Nat, walking and moving her hips in a not-so-saintly way. Kiba suddenly appeared with a sacred demonic sword, along with Ryu and Zero, who were still wearing their pajamas, the three of them on guard, but when they saw Nat leave, they sighed. Kiba sat next to Issei, who was still in shock at what happened. Difficult start. Huh. He said to make his sword disappear and see Issei. So? It seems. Said Issei looking where Nat went. Come on, don't make that face, let's go have breakfast. Said Kiba putting his hand on Issei's shoulder. If it's okay with you, we'll go to sleep. Said the Miik brothers as they returned to sleep. Do you want a coffee? Said Kiba walking to the kitchen followed by Issei. What I need is a doctor. Said Issei while Kiba laughed. He also said that when he started dating Tsubaki. One question Kiba, how are you doing with Shinra-senpai? Issei said with a malicious look. Oh, come on, thanks to your advice. Although at the beginning there were several bumps. But we were able to overcome them. She's still jealous but not like before. Said Kiba, sweating nervously. Ha 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 ha. Who would say the Prince of Kuo didn't know how to say, I like you to his senpai? Said Issei laughing. And how are you doing with Sona-senpai? Kiba said with a smile of victory on his face when he saw Issei's shock. Sona and I don't have anything yet, even though I whispered the last thing. They still can't kill me. Damn them. Said a wounded and bleeding Nick. We'll see about that. Said a black-haired man. At that moment the black-haired man shot and killed Nick and took a list out of his bag and saw the image of his next target. I'm coming for you, Haidu Issei. Said the black-haired man to drop a photo of the aforementioned. Issei and Kiba were talking, but Issei remembered a special detail. Today was his date with Sona. Issei got up from his chair and began to change as quickly as he could. Nat had left after breakfast. Zero and Ryu were in his room playing video games. Issei wanted to join the game, but Kiba and he trained for a while, and Gasper stopped by his room with Valerie talking. Those two already seem like a couple. Issei finished dressing, wearing a black hood and blue pants and black shoes. Kiba left the house in your care. Issei said before leaving after receiving a nod from him. I have a feeling something is going to happen. Said Drake in his mind. I hope it's just a feeling. After Issei teleported to Kuo, he arrived at the university gate and entered, since he had his original appearance of heterochromatic eyes and bicolor hair, causing a massive blush among women and envy among men. Then one of the envious ones approached Issei. Hey kid, get out of here and leave the men with the women. Said the guy in an arrogant tone. What if I don't want to? Said Issei without seeing the idiot who was going to get beaten. I'm going to hit you. Said the guy twisting his fingers. As if you could. Issei said smiling. The fed-up guy threw a punch at his face but didn't hit because Issei stopped him with his bare hand and hit him in the stomach, making him spit and breathe at the same time and sending him 2 steps back. Lower your head. A katana. Both dragons said as Issei crouched down and the edge of a katana passed over his head and cut a lock of his hair. Hey, I loved that lock of hair. Issei said angrily. At Onasama take it. Said a girl throwing 2 wooden swords. Thank you, darling. Said Issei winking at her so that the girl fainted with a trickle of blood running down her nose. Shall we continue? Issei asked to stand on guard with 2 swords and for 2 to go against him, one with his bare fists and the other with a katana. Issei hit one in the neck with the handle of a sword, knocking him unconscious. The other one who had the katana was shaking with fear, but Issei hit him a couple of times on the sides, making him spit, and finally he hit him in the face, putting him to sleep. Is that all? Said Issei throwing the swords to the ground. Someone knows Sona Shitori. Said Issei looking at the crowd. You're talking about the Iron President. Said a voice from the crowd. Exactly. But I've already wasted a lot of time, so can you tell me which room it is in? Said Issei walking. In room 1. Tad Onasama. A female voice shouted. Thank you. Issei said and went to said room. Once arriving at the living room he saw the person he didn't want to see. That's how he saw Razor Phoenix waiting for his wife. Issei rolled his eyes bored. Wow, I didn't expect to see you here, lizard. Razor said. Boo. Issei said without seeing Razor. Well. He didn't continue because Issei interrupted him. I'd have asked you. Issei said, closing his eyes. How dare you talk to me like that? Razor said angrily. I dare because this mouth that you see is only mine and my partner's, and I decide what to say and what not to say. Chicken. Said Issei with his eyes closed. I may be a chicken, but I have more power than you. Said Razor. Even if you say you have power, what you have in your pants doesn't prove it. Said Issei laughing since he saved him from the bell, not him. Razor. Oh Issei-kun, you are here. Said Sona leaving her classroom. How could I forget a date with such a beautiful lady? Said Issei taking Sona by the hand while she blushed since he caught her off guard. Sona blushed at what Issei told her. Thanks. You look good. Said Sona still blushing. No more than you. So-chan. Issei said in Sona's ear. It was no secret that Sona liked Issei since ever since Saji got sick and he was in the student council. That daily coexistence during their free time and Issei's energetic attitude caught her attention, and they began to become friends. And of course, since he declared his love to Riaz, and before his death, he told her to start calling him by his name, and with great sadness he did so, and after they got to know each other better he began to call her So-chan, since Issei had feelings for her since before being a demon. "Well, are we going to our date?" said Issei, walking hand in hand with Sona. In the courtyard of the university everyone was murmuring as they saw the Iron President with an Adonis. "Watch out." In the words of the girls. "Well, where do you want to go, So-chan?" said Issei, seeing Sona blushing since she still isn't used to the affectionate suffix. "To the mall," said Sona, getting determined. They both walked to the mall talking about unimportant things without realizing that a man was following them both, but more so their goal. Already at the mall they went to an arcade where Sona seemed like a machine, winning several games with great ease, and after a few minutes they went to a park where there were several tables where they were playing chess. Issei took some pieces out of his bag to play with Sona. Both had a great time according to Sona, since Issei thought about the interests of both. The two walked hand in hand in the park and sat on a bench. The old people laughed as they remembered their youth, and the married couple smiled with nostalgia as they remembered those times when they were boyfriends. "I had a good time, Issei-kun," said Sona, looking at Issei's face. "Me too, Sona," said Issei. Wow, we have a young couple here," said a black-haired man emerging from the shadows. "Who are you?" said Issei, getting into a fighting stance. "Your murderer," said the unknown person, taking out a gun. Issei felt an aura of Dragon Slayer bullets, said Issei, taking out Ascalon. "As the saying goes, to fight with fire you have to use fire." The person fired several bullets at Issei, who deflected them with Ascalon. "Sona, tell Kiba to come," Issei said seriously. So Sona nodded. "You're not going to call for reinforcements, girl," said the guy, changing the bullets to sacred bullets. "I knew something bad was going to happen," said Drake, since he knew that Issei was weak to the types of bullets. "Divide." The sacred charge of bullets was divided in half, then the subject fired again, then another magic circle appeared, and Kiba arrived with two sacred swords, thanks to his subspecies of balance break. "You took too long," said Issei, jumping and dodging the last bullets. "Sorry, I was on a date with Tsubaki," Kiba said, giving Issei a sword. "It seems that you are saved for today. But come back because I always achieve my goals," said the stranger before leaving through the magic circle. "Great, I got out of a war and a maniac is looking for me," Issei said, sighing. "Let's go home and talk about this," Kiba said. "I want to go too," said Sona, sticking close to Issei. "Oh, let's go then," Issei said while letting out a sigh. Already at the Haidu residence there was a knock on the door, and Issei went to see and saw Nat injured and bleeding from her stomach. "Nat," said Issei, seeing Nat's pitiful state. She collapsed and Issei caught her and took her inside his house. Sona and Kiba, seeing the girl, went after Issei as he was carrying her princess style. Once in Issei's room, he put her on his bed and began to remove her vest as he saw the wound, and at first glance saw that it was a bullet hole. When he took it off, he called Kiba. "Kiba, I need you to bring a disinfected needle, a container with clean water, a rag and some gauze from the kitchen," Issei said, to which Kiba nodded. Within minutes Kiba had already brought everything that Issei asked for. He quickly took some tweezers that he had taken out with magic and held the wound open to take out the bullet. Once the bullet was out, he closed the wound and sewed it up, cleaned the blood that was there and cleaned Nat's face, left the room and sat in the living room to think who was it. Then they knocked on the door again. "Hello," said Issei, opening the door and seeing several SHIELD agents outside his house. "We're looking for Natasha Romanoff, is she here?" said the agent, looking at the house from the door. "No, in fact I haven't seen her since the morning she left," said Issei. "Thank you, have a nice day," said the agent before leaving. "Likewise," Issei said, closing the door. "Kiba, I want you to use your night skills and see what they are planning," said Issei, looking at Kiba, who nodded. "Ryu, zero check Nat's room, you will be the guards of that area," said Issei, looking at those mentioned who had just arrived. "Asper uses the vampires to watch the house in the blind spots, and if you see something strange, tell me," said Issei, to which Gasper nodded. Issei went above his house and saw several helicopters flying above it, then Kiba spoke to him. "Issei is apparently being sought for killing a certain Nick Fury, and they are also going to look for you because they say there is evidence against you," said Kiba, to which Issei was surprised and went inside his house. "Everyone out of the house now," said Issei, seeing that they wanted to enter. Tofos left through a magic circle to another place, including Kiba, who went to Kuo Academy, and Gasper went to the Teeps fraction of vampires to see Valerie. Issei went to Nat's room and took her like a princess and teleported to a house he had in the country. Then he looked at the entrance and the captain was wearing a hood that covered his face and was waiting for him. Steve saw Nat and opened the house and Issei went to put her to bed in a room while she wakes up. "What's up, Captain?" said Issei looking at Steve. "Fury was murdered and they say that the three of us were the culprits," said Steve. "But that's impossible unless," Issei said realizing something. "So S.H.I.E.L.D. was infected by Hydra," said Steve. "Now we can't trust anyone but ourselves." "I trust you, Captain," said Issei. "And wherever you go I will go. No matter if they call me a traitor I will always go by your side." "Thanks, Issei," Steve said. "We have a problem. Now they're going to look for us everywhere," said Issei. "We have nowhere to go, we just have to escape as far as we can," Steve said, but he realized something. "We do have a place to go. Let's wait for Nat to wake up before we go then," Issei said. "Captain and his shield?" Issei asked. "It's inside my personal magic space," Steve said. "That sounded like a confession," said a Nat lying in bed putting her hand on her head. "Nat, what happened to you?" Steve said, seeing that she was still hurt. "I was ambushed when I was going to see Fury at the new facilities. I was able to escape and get to Issei's house. They shot me and a guy with a metal arm shot me in the stomach and told me I would die slowly," said Nat remembering that event. "Did he have a weapon with sacred energy and Dragon Slayer?" Issei said remembering his assassin. "Yes, he actually had a gun in each hand, a slayer and a sacred one," Nat said. "Nat rest. Issei applies healing magic," Steve ordered. "As you command, Captain," said Issei, beginning to create a complex magic circle. "I hope it works out." After a few seconds Issei finished it and bit his finger and blood came out, which when it fell into the circle turned it red and the runes began to move. "Natasha Romanoff, do you accept being a half-breed dragon?" said Issei seeing the circle flickering. "I accept," Nat said without hesitation since she would be healed quickly. And she would be able to spend more time with Issei. "I do Issei order you to rise and walk from today like a dragon for all eternity," Issei said with a draconic voice. Nat was being surrounded by a red aura combined with black, she was covered with that aura and after a few minutes she entered it and fell asleep. "What did you do?" Steve said curiously. "I turned her into a half-breed dragon, she will be weak to magic and Dragon Slayer weapons and she will have more strength than usual and will be able to use magic at decent levels," said Issei looking at Nat. "I just hope she doesn't choose me as a partner because in her mating season she will be an untamable beast of sex and I don't want that." Issei didn't know how wrong he was at that moment. "Well, that will work given the situation," Steve said with a smile. "That was one of the reasons why I did it," Issei said earning a look from Steve. "The other reason is a more personal reason." That last thing left Steve in doubt. What was that personal motive? "Well, that doesn't matter now, what matters is the situation. Why do they want to kill them? If they are innocent, they surely want them to join them, and if they refuse, they will die." Nick knew that shield was going to fall, but he didn't tell anyone. "Why?" That was the question that was on his mind. "Why do they want to kill you?" Drake asked. "Maybe because they are a threat to his plans," Albion said seriously and drawing conclusions that is the only thing that occurs to him. "If that were the case, why not ask us to join them instead of killing us?" said Issei, putting a hand on his chin. "Because he would know that we would refuse," said Steve crossing his arms. "But to blame us for killing Fury is too much. There are only two people we can trust," said Steve. "We can only trust Agent Hill and a friend of mine. Of the others it wouldn't be dangerous." "Does anyone else know about this cabin?" Steve said looking at Issei. "Only Akeno, you and I know," said Issei seeing several helicopters in the area. "They already found us, we have to go." Issei went to Nat's room and woke her up. She woke up scared since she didn't know the place, but she saw Issei and relaxed and heard him say a few words and remembered the situation they were in. "Issei, what's wrong?" said Nat as she saw the aforementioned man pacing around the room. "They found us, we have to go," said Issei taking a backpack with several clothes for him. Nat got up and heard several shots and saw Steve who was with his shield resisting the attacks as best he could. Issei made a magic barrier around the cabin and it resisted the impact as best it could since there were also magic attacks. Welshing Dragon Balance Break. The combination of both armors appeared. Issei deactivated the gloves and grew his nails to such an extent that they looked like claws. Issei deactivated the armor helmet and saw Nat and Steve. "Oh, I'll give you time, I'll meet you later," said Issei, looking at both of them seriously. "Issei, don't do it," Nat said worried about Issei. "It's an order, not a question," said Issei as two dragons behind him appeared and entered behind him. "You will meet us at this address," Steve said, writing an address on a piece of paper that he gave to Issei and put it in his pants pocket, removing the armor from that area. "Promise that you will come back," said Nat, almost on the verge of tears. "I don't promise anything, but if I die I will leave you something," said Issei to give Nat a kiss, hugging her as best he could. When he separated from her, he hit her on the back of the neck that put her to sleep. "I love you, but you wouldn't let me fight and they would hurt you. Take care and survive," said Steve, taking Nat princess style and taking her through a magic circle. Issei deactivated the shield inside. "It's time for action." He put on the armor helmet and flew out at full speed. When he got outside, he saw several corrupt agents and began to beat them, leaving him unconscious. Then he saw the guy who attacked him in the park. He got angry and went against him to hit him in the face, but he stopped him by putting himself in a cross pose. Issei reacted quickly and kicked him in the rib. He defended himself, but felt an immense aura. He was easily at the level of a god, and that worries him a little. Then the aura began to increase, and a black box appeared with a lion symbol on the front. Then the box opened, and a black lion armor appeared. This reminded him of Regulus. "Impossible, Issei activates the Diabolos now," said Drake, scared since he would recognize that armor anywhere. "What are you waiting for? Do it before it's too late," Albion shouted, since he also knew that armor. "The crimson dragon that lives within me awakens from your domain. The crimson heavenly dragon that I possess within me, rise to become king. The god of jet black infinity. The glorious god of dreams. They watch over the false existence that we must become, that which transcends the limits. We'll dance like a glow in hell." The black armor covered Issei, and the wings of the divine, dividing of silver color and light blue touches, appeared and began to cover a part of the armor, as if giving it more power, and when it finished it showed a black armor with silver touches everywhere of it. "You'll be the first to see this," said the black-haired man. Then the lion disarmed himself and covered the black-haired man, and a great glow appeared, and when he finished he saw a black armor with the face of a lion in the center, and the mane as a helmet. He wore a white cape on his back, and on his hands were gloves that resembled the claws of a lion, also on his feet. "You are looking at an ex-knight of Athena, the ex-knight of Leo, the holy gold knight," said the black-haired man as a helmet appeared that covered his mouth and left his eyes uncovered. "Now I see why they told me to activate this armor," Issei said in his mind. "Well, shall we start?" said the black-haired man to kick Issei in the face, who was blocking him. With one leap he pushed himself back so that a face was created in one hand, and he threw it into the air to say the name of his attack. Lightning plasma. Several rays hit Issei's armor, sending him flying several meters back, leaving him in pain. That hit was damaging. Issei got up and went at him with his bare fists, then he also went at him at full speed. The blows from both hit both in the face, neither suffered damage. Suddenly Issei threw another punch, but it was dodged by the other hand, and the black-haired man sent Issei flying with a kick, resulting in arriving at the city of Grecia, since the cabin was there. The subject propelled himself to where Issei was. As he fell near the sanctuary where he once belonged, Issei got up, saw the subject who crossed his arms almost being close to him. He charged energy in his hands and created the energy claws that he used against Loki, and used Albion's poison to cause more damage. Lion claws. From the gloves came out long claws that reached the ground, and the aura they emanated was monstrous. Inside a sanctuary, a man in golden armor with two horns coming out of his shoulders. His hair was pale lilac and he wore glasses. He ran as fast as he could to see his goddess. This man was Mu of Ares, one of the 12 golden knights. When he arrived where his goddess was, he knelt down and spoke. "My lady has returned," said Mu seriously, to which his goddess was surprised and understood who he was referring to. "Mu, go to Shaka and stop him," said the woman with light purple hair and blue eyes. "Yes, goddess Athena," said Mu to go to his companion Sokka. "I hope that hatred and evil have not consumed you, James," said the goddess, looking outside her sanctuary. Issei got up and went against the dark-haired man, since they both had claws. Both were looking to cause damage to the enemy. Issei kicked the dark-haired man in the face and stunned him. He went backwards and began to charge magic in the wings he had, and so much was that it began to look like fire. When it was ready to be used, Issei ran his hands over his back, and the claws now had fire. The black-haired boy was stunned by that blow. He doesn't have to underestimate this child. His claws were covered in ice. Since the child uses fire, he has to use the opposite element. Both went to meet the other, giving blows that the other covered or dodged. In the case of Issei. Crack. Issei's claws were destroyed. He put on the armor's gloves and covered himself from the claw that came from the stranger. Issei took out his aura, and the subject also did the same. Issei took flight and went against the guy. Both fought in the air. The blows were deadly, neither gave truce. The shock waves did not make them wait. The subject hit him in the stomach that knocked the wind out of him and sent him to the ground. Issei, in a mere fall, sent him a burst of dragon shots that he dodged or covered. Issei stabilized in the air and with the thrusters of his armor went against the black-haired man. Since he was busy dodging Issei's shots, he took advantage and hit him in the chest. Dragon first. From Issei's fists came out dragons made of. In a large crater the figure of the black-haired man appears, stamped on the ground with a smile on his face. Lightning plasma. The subject released his attack and hit Issei in the helmet and destroyed them and sent him to the ground. He got up as best he could and regenerated into a helmet and went against the black-haired man, a fist in the face of one and in the stomach of the other. Issei vomited blood from the blow to the stomach and the subject was left without his helmet due to the blow that Issei gave him in the face. Issei knelt down from the blow and the black-haired man took advantage and kicked him in the face, sending him flying backwards, hitting a mountain, leaving a crater on the side of the mountain. The subject was surprised since he was the first to destroy the helmet of his armor. He will go far if he defeats him. You are the first to break the helmet of my armor, so I will tell you my name is James Buchanan Barnes, the Winter Soldier, said the one known as James. And? Why? Are you telling me that? He said, coming out of the mountain wounded, without parts of his armor but still alive. Because I know you will go far and I will let you live. For now. See you hide, Issei, said James to leave from there. Wow, you're very hurt, said a guy with glasses. Shaka, who had his eyes closed, almost opened them because Issei gave off such a strong and firm aura, but at the same time calm and full of love. He seemed like a. We have to take him to Our Lady, said the purple hair. Issei was going to answer, but he fainted, but the knight caught him. Shaka, it's time to go, said Mew, who had Issei on his shoulders bleeding from the side of his mouth. Come on then, Mew, said Shaka, walking with his eyes closed. You know, if you keep up that dry attitude you'll never get a girlfriend, said Mew, earning a vein on his forehead from Shaka. It was no lie that the remaining 11 knights had a bet. If they made Shaka open his eyes once, he would be chosen to be the next patriarch of the sanctuary and the others would be unable to do anything. And if you keep trying to make me open my eyes, I will not hesitate to make you blind, deaf and mute, said Shaka, so that Mew trembled a little. In Washington, Steve and Nat had arrived at a house. As soon as they arrived, they turned on the television and saw a news story that shocked them. Great damage was caused where there used to be a wheat field, which was reduced to ashes. It is said that 2 men in black armor were fighting, and then 2 in golden armor arrived and took one away, and the other escaped from the scene. The whereabouts of the 3 are still unknown, said a reporter. Nat formulated a hypothesis, since if Issei had not arrived, it was because he had been taken, and the other one escaped. Nat wondered what state he was in. Calm down, Nat, he's going to be okay, Steve said, putting his hand on Nat's shoulder. I know, it just worries me a little, Nat said. Who are you talking about? Said a black-haired man with brown eyes and a goatee. It was a black person. From a colleague who gave us time to come here, said Steve. But getting back to the topic, what S.H.I.E.L.D. wants is this, I got it from the last mission that Fury gave me, said Steve, taking out a USB memory stick with the logo of the aforementioned agency. We must have a tracker because they have found them wherever they go, said the black-haired man. It's most likely Sam. Is there a shopping mall nearby? Steve said, while Nat had a lost look watching the television, thinking about Issei. Issei was lying on a bed in a place while 12 people were around him. These were the 12 golden knights of Athena: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So the 12 signs of the Greek zodiac, the 12 golden knights represented each sign of the zodiac and protected a house according to their signs. On the path of the 12 houses there is a last one, and this is the sanctuary where the goddess Athena is, and the patriarch of the sanctuary, who is the leader of the 12 knights. Issei started to wake up, but he felt like he was being watched. And he saw 12 people around him as quickly as he could. Welshing dragon balance break. The 2-colored armor appeared and Issei stood on guard. The 12 knights did the same, but Shaka stopped them. This is no way to thank those who saved you, Shaka said. Where am I? Who are you? Said Issei. We are the 12 knights of the zodiac. I am you, the golden knight of Aries, said the purple-haired boy with blue eyes. I am Aldebaran, the golden knight of Taurus, said a tall black-haired man with armor that had 2 horns on the helmet. I am Cannon, the golden knight of Gemini, said a blue-haired man with green eyes while wearing armor with a helmet that on one side showed a happy face and on the other side an angry face. I am Death Mask, the golden knight of Cancer, said another blue-haired man with one eye closed and the other open. He was wearing armor and on his helmet he had a series of horns coming out of it. I am Ioria, Leo's golden knight, said a brown-haired boy with honey-colored eyes while wearing armor similar to the one James was wearing. I am Shaka, the Golden Knight of Virgo, said a blond man while he had his eyes closed and one hand on his chest. His armor had large shoulder pads on the sides. I am Donko, Golden Knight of Libra and the oldest of them, said a brown-haired man while his armor on the part of both arms had a kind of shield and on his back he had 2 swords and 2 spears. I am Milo, the Golden Knight of Scorpio, said a retard with blue eyes. A tail like a scorpion came out of her back. I am Sia, the Golden Knight of Sagittarius, said a brown-haired boy with a pair of golden wings coming out of his armor and he had a bow and arrow. I am Sura, the Golden Knight of Capricorn, said a green-haired man with brown eyes while 2 horns emerged from the helmet of his armor. I am Camus, the Golden Knight of Aquarius, said a blue-haired man with blue eyes. I am Aphrodite, Golden Knight of Pisces. She fixed a light blue hair with green eyes while holding a rose in her mouth. Thank you for saving me. But I have to go, said Issei, spreading his dragon wings and flying away. Hanan, please, Shaka said. Another dimension. The slingshot went against Issei and trapped him in a sphere without him knowing it as he continued in flight, but the landscape repeated itself. Partner, raise your aura to the maximum, said Albion. Issei did it without opposing. He raised his aura to the maximum, the place where they were began to shake, and suddenly the place exploded and he appeared in the same place as before. Well, he's the second one to escape from the other dimension, said Kanan looking at Issei. What's going on here? Said a purple-haired girl who entered where the 12 knights entered. Athena-sama, said the 12 knights and Issei kneeling before her. Who is this boy? Said Athena pointing at Issei who was paralyzed with fear as he exerted a powerful aura. Issei immediately brought out his aura and it was equal to hers. Neither of them gave way. The knights also raised their aura, but they were overshadowed by Issei and Athena's. Shaka, who still had his eyes closed, opened them to see the one who wielded such a powerful aura. Athena-sama. He is the boy from Elohim's prophecy, said Shaka looking at Athena who was surprised and couldn't help but compare the aura of Elohim and that of Issei. They were almost the same. The only difference is that Issei was not an angel, but his aura gave off love and power to protect what matters to him. I am Athena, the daughter of Zeus, god king of Olympus, said Athena, bowing. Hi do Issei, I am the Sekiruite and the Heryukuo, a pleasure, said Issei while taking out both sacred gears. It's good to see you again Athena, said Drake. This shrine brings back memories of our fight here, said Albion. They still owe me Aphrodite's field of piranha roses, said Athena. Tell that idiot Drake since he burned them I just used the poison, said Albion. The poison of the piranha roses, said Aphrodite. So the poison of the piranha roses comes from Albion, since he is the only being that can create it, said Albion. Believe it or not, celestial dragons have had several influences in the world, be it with the taking of Constantinople or the French Revolution, said Athena. Athena-sama, I have to go. My friends are in danger and I have to help them, said Issei lowering his head in supplication. Hanan, could you do him the favor, said Athena. But promise that you will return to the sanctuary. Drake and Albion will guide you here. Another dimension. When Kanan said that, Issei left leaving the knights in doubt. What prophecy? Said the 11 knights. Issei teleported to a house that was at the address. He entered the house and there was no one there. Partner, I feel the brat's aura following her, said Drake. Well, let's go then, said Issei to grab a motorcycle that was outside the house and leave on it. After a few minutes he felt Nat's aura in a car and followed the car that was heading to the mall. When the car parked he left the motorcycle in the motorcycle parking space. Nat and Steve got out of the car and Issei followed behind them hiding his aura so that Nat wouldn't feel it since she was more sensitive. Already inside the mall they went to an electronics store. Issei decided to surprise them. He went towards it and hugged Nat by the waist while Steve sighed. You caught some of Fury, didn't you? Said Steve. You expected me to say hello to them? Issei said. Nat had her eyes closed, letting the warmth of the hug fill her with peace. She did nothing to push him away, but rather settled better, pressing her back against Issei's chest. She was still trying to decipher the code that her memory held, and then a salesman came and saw the affectionate scene between Nat and Issei and went to Steve. Single, huh? Said the salesman. Yes. Steve said, seeing that Nat was almost finished. Well, what can you do? Said the salesman sadly. Well, how can I help you? Said the salesman. We want to buy a laptop, but the couple is trying that one out. Steve said, pointing at Issei and Nat. Let's go on a trip, said Issei looking at the title on the screen. Where will they go? Said the seller. In New Jersey, Nat said, turning around to see Issei who was still hugging her. Drake, on the other hand, laughed at Albion's misfortune who was in a fetal position on the floor. Then we have to go, Steve said, making Nat and Issei nod. I'll come next week to buy that laptop, Issei said, pointing at the laptop they used. 10 minutes have passed, let's go. Said Nat to break free from Issei's embrace and walk. Thanks for coming and I'll see you next week. Said the salesman. Issei, where were you? Nat said in an emotionless voice that made Issei tense. Issei sighed and proceeded to tell them everything that happened, surprising them both. Nat went ahead of them, angry because she met another woman. Issei went to her side and began to explain the details of the draconification. She only thanked Issei for the detail of explaining everything that she still did not understand. Then Issei told her that if she let herself be carried away by her emotions, such as jealousy, hate, love, her power would grow, in addition to explaining to her about the mating season, something that made Nat blush. Already in the parking lot, the three of them got into the car they came from. Issei left the motorcycle there in the parking lot. The road was already quiet, Steve driving, Nat next to him and Issei sitting in the back. Then a black car started following them and started shooting at them. Steve did what he could to avoid the shots, changing lanes every moment. Then the subject who fought with Issei took out a gun and shot the car and took it off the road. The black car stopped, and from there several armed agents got out and began to shoot at the car that exploded. The three of them were already outside of it. Nat hid in another car, Steve got into a bus, and Issei stayed under the bridge. The three prepared for an imminent fight. Issei activated his armor, Nat took out her pistol and Steve his shield. The three of them looked at each other and nodded. Issei came out of his hiding place too. Welsh Dragon Balance Break. Star Sonic Boost Night. The thin armor covered Issei, and he went against those who were going down, leaving them unconscious. Nat came out of his shadow and began to shoot at the heads of those who were on the bridge, killing them instantly. The black-haired man summoned his dark lion armor and put it on and saw Issei, and he did the same to start a chant. The heavenly dragons who stole goddess principles. We did it for power and destruction. Supremacy and domination are now mine. We had no choice. I will become the only heavenly dragon. We will show you the true power of a dragon. Silver. Crimson Dragon. The two-colored armor appeared. Issei went against the lion. He covered himself from an attack that was going to hit him in the face. Crimson Boost. Silver Divide. Both dragons did their part. Drag increased Issei's power, and Albion divided him from James. He prepared himself since he knew that his power had been taken away. Since they were now in a city they had to go up to fight. Issei took out Ascalon, and James extended his lion claws. Burning Moon. The crescent moon went against James, who destroyed it with his claws. Issei extended his sword and went against James, who raised a hand and stopped the sword, and gave Issei a claw in the chest, and then a kick that sent him flying backwards. He got up as best he could and took Ascalon, and he was shining. Nat and Steve were fighting against several agents. Nat shot two of them and killed them. Steve threw his shield and knocked two of them to the ground. It is worth noting that he entered his balance break so as not to have so many problems. Nat suddenly took out a pair of dragon wings, and with them she defended herself from the impact of the bullets, using them as a shield, successfully covering herself from the bullets. Suddenly a bullet caused her more pain than usual, and she deduced that it was a bullet with Slayer attributes. She put away her wings and went against the guy with the Slayer weapon, but another guy had her in his sights. Steve threw his shield and knocked out the one who had Nat in his sights. His shield was far from him. Suddenly, several agents surrounded him when he took his shield. Nat was also surrounded by several agents. She raised her hands. She could no longer do anything against that amount of bullets. "Give up, you can't beat me," said James as his helmet disappeared. Steve recognized him instantly and only said one word. "Bucky?" Steve said, looking at James. Steve saw him and was shocked since he was supposed to be dead when he fell from the train that was going to the Hydra base. The three of them were handcuffed and taken to a car, and there they were taken to a secluded place. Nat, who had been shot with a Slayer bullet, was bleeding. Issei did what he could to limit the bleeding, since the handcuffs were anti-magic and could not apply healing. "He's bleeding and needs urgent medical attention," Issei said so the agents wouldn't respond. "Hey, we're talking to you," said Steve as an agent pulled out a bar that was electrified. With a quick movement he knocked out the other agent and used the bar on the one who was driving, making the car stop suddenly, and since this was the last one there were no problems. The agent removed the helmet that covered his identity and revealed a brunette with brown eyes, Fury's right hand. "Maria Hill. How can you stand wearing these things?" said Maria, adjusting her hair. "What?" said Maria. "Nat needs treatment," Issei said, worried about Nat. "Okay, let's go," said Maria. Nkuo Kiba was with Tsubaki and Sona, who were worried since they saw the news and feared that the one who was taken was Issei. Kiba for his part was thinking about the raiding game that they should have in 2 days. Then a communication circle appeared in Kiba's ear. "Kiba, I have little time, so I need you to tell Ajuka Sama that the game will have to be postponed for the moment, and tell Sona that when I finish doing this, I will go talk to her and Akeno," said Issei to cut off the communication between them. Kiba sighed. Only he gets into these problems. Oh well, there's only one thing left to do. Follow him. Nat, Issei and Steve followed Maria to an underground base where they treated Nat and gave him Issei's blood. Since he is the only dragon there was, he was used as a walking blood bag. He did not mind in the least. When Nat had recovered, the bullet was removed and the wound was stitched up. Issei was sleeping in a room while Maria came in to see him and woke him up. He got up and went to another room, and there he saw Nat, Steve and Nick. "It must be a joke. You were supposed to die," said Issei, surprised since according to what Kiba told him, he was murdered. "How are you, Fury?" Steve said with his arms crossed. "A broken arm, a shattered collarbone, a broken leg, and a terrible migraine," Nick said. "Don't forget the lung," said the doctor who was still treating Nat. "Yes. We must not forget the lungs," said Fury, settling into bed. "Fury, why did they want to kill you?" Steve said. "Why did they name you the representative of the humans as well as the leader of the Avengers, since with that title, they couldn't force you or your team to do anything against their will?" Nick said while sitting. "But before you take the position, I need you to destroy S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick said seriously. "But how would we do it? It would take us years to destroy spies and agents," Issei said incredulously. "They are not going to destroy the corrupt Helicurgers that are there with the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., said Nick, so that Maria could bring a briefcase with 3 cards. "But that they can destroy the Helicurgers, but they have to plant all 3 of them, since the plan is for them to destroy each other, and for that they have to replace one of those cards with one of these," said Nick. "Fine, we will do it, but with one condition, that you go with Nat when she tells you, while Issei, Sam and I exchange the cards," said Steve seriously. "Well, the Helicurgers are going to launch in a couple of hours, so you have to put on your uniform," said Nick. Steve walked out of where they were and looked at the field near them and closed his eyes to let a memory flood through his mind. Flashback. Steve Rogers, a boy of barely 20 years old, short in stature and with a weak body, was abused daily by more than one subject who wanted to bother him, and he faced him, but the result was inevitable. He always lost. If he had a sacred gear, he did not use it because it would be an abuse of his power, and he did not want to abuse what they gave him. But he had a friend named James Buchanan Barnes. He was a sergeant in the United States Army. He was a great person. He always saved Steve and helped him. When Steve's mother died, he was left alone, and James stayed to live with him for a few days. They both lived in Brooklyn. Sorry if I don't write it like that. And since they both grew up together since they were children, he called him Bucky until he left for a few years and came back as an adult. Steve underwent a project called Super Soldier that increased his height, physique and strength. One day, several months into the project, he and his team went to destroy a German base, where James was wearing Black Lion armor. Then James explained what that armor was, since it turns out that the god Hades was giving Spectre armor to former Knights of the Zodiac, and James was one and retired, since he wanted a peaceful life. Steve finds out that the armor had a powerful aura that made him gasp. But he freed him and took him home. But he joined the missions with Steve, but one day they were on a train and they were looting it. James did not use his lion armor, and a grenade detonated and opened a part of the train car, and James fell from the car. After that, nothing more was known about him. Until today. Then flashback. "Captain, Sam is here," said Issei with a black-haired man with amber and black eyes. "Steve, it's time, Issei already told me the plan," said Sam. "Well, Sam, do you have a uniform?" Steve said. "No, why Steve?" said Sam. "Because to fight in a war you need a uniform," said Steve to go to a museum that was nearby. An elderly man of no more than 75 years old, a security guard at that museum, was making his rounds before the museum's next exhibition. Then I noticed that Captain America's suit is not there. There was only the mannequin with a replica of the original shield. Only one sentence can come out of his mouth. "I'm sure I'll be fired for this," said the old man surnamed Lee. 15. Coming out of the forest there were 4 figures, and the first was Captain America, who was wearing his first suit, with his shield in his hand. Issei was wearing training clothes since they were tight to the body. Sam was wearing military pants, and on his back he was carrying a backpack. And Maria, who had her uniform from where she works. They walked a few minutes and arrived at the shield security station. Several guards shot at them, but nothing that Steve's shield couldn't fix. Once at the security station, Steve picked up the microphone and spoke. "I know you've heard many things about us. That we are fugitives, murderers, but I'll tell you the truth, S.H.I.E.L.D. was contaminated by Hydra. Maybe you are not agents of that agency, but perhaps the one next to you is. Those who truly want to protect the world, stand up and fight with me. I know I'm nobody to force you, but I'll be grateful for that," said Steve, releasing the microphone. "Wow, you thought of that at the last minute, or you wrote it down," said Albion. "I give you a 7 for the speech. It could have been better," said Drake while Issei and Sam laughed nervously until Issei got serious. "Well, Let's start, Issei said as his eyes widened. I will stay here and give you information. The helicopter took off so Steve flew. Said Maria laughing when she saw Steve's face, which was scared. Oh. The great Captain America, the one who faced the aliens and won, is afraid of heights. Said Albion, making fun of him. Shut up and let's get started. Steve said as he walked to the exit, followed by Issei and Sam. Welshing Dragon balance break. The combination of both armors covered Issei, and Sam took out a pair of metal wings and a propeller from the backpack he had. Issei and Sam took Steve's hand and went up at full speed. When they arrived, they let go of Steve and fell next to him. Hey Cap, how do I know who the bad guys you were talking about are? Sam said. If they shoot you, they're the bad guys. Issei said to check if he had the card. Alright, let's go. Steve said as he started running. Several soldiers saw him and started shooting, but he threw away his shield. They threw a grenade at him, and Steve took it and threw it back, and it exploded near several agents, and Steve took the opportunity to hit several agents in the face with his shield, knocking them unconscious and continuing on his way. After a few minutes he arrived at the systems chamber and put a code on the bar, and then replaced a card with the one he was carrying. Alpha ready. Steve said to Maria over the communicator. Falcon, it's your turn. Maria said over the communicator. Wait a minute. They both said. Falcon was flying, dodging several missiles that were being fired at him, and several enemy ships had already fallen, but they kept appearing and were firing more and more at him. Falcon dodged several missiles, but they were guided by heat. He headed to the bottom of the helicopter, turning with precision, making the missiles explode between each other. Only 2 remained. Then he went to the bottom of the helicopter and saw the systems chamber. The missiles were near him. He put away his wings and began to fall. The missiles hit the systems chamber, and Sam went in there. Put in the code, changed a card and flew out of there. Only what does Issei do now? Beta ready. Said Sam, flying and dodging several shots from the ships that returned. Issei, you're the only one left. Said Maria looking at the monitor, as 2 agents were going to enter. As soon as they entered she shot them both and killed them. I need help here. Said Issei as he was flying defensively since there were several flies behind him. On the top floor of the new shield building was a blond man of at least 45 years old, and his name was Alexander Pierce, the general director of the aforementioned agency. Next to him were several members of the council, 2 men and a woman. The men were black-haired, and one had a white beard, brown eyes and was wearing an elegant jacket. The woman was a blonde with green eyes. She was a lady of about 50 years old. Or at least that's what she looked like. I have a question for you. Said Pierce. If tomorrow a convoy with a nuclear missile was going to your nations, and you had the button to stop it, knowing that your children would be where the convoy was going, wouldn't you press that button? As he said this he poured a glass of champagne and gave it to a council member. Not if that button is yours. Said the councillor, throwing the champagne. Alexander just clicked his tongue and raised his eyebrow softly to take his phone and open an app, and when he did he pointed his phone at the councilman and the card he had made a hole in his collarbone, which made him fall to the ground suddenly. One out, who's next? Pierce said, pointing the phone at the woman. The woman moved quickly towards him and hit him in the ribs, and then used her arm to make him drop the gun he was holding and throw it to the ground, which the woman took advantage of and grabbed it and pointed it at him. Excuse me if I interrupt something. Said the woman so that he would take off a mesh that worked as a mask showing. Agent Romanov. Said a black-haired man. Then from outside you could hear the sounds of a helicopter, and everyone looked outside and saw that a helicopter had landed on the platform, and a guy in black boots came out of there, and when he came in he saw Pierce, and he got scared because he was supposed to be dead. Nick. Pierce said. Romanov initiates phase 2. Nick said, not paying attention to Pierce. Nat went to the computers and began to decipher codes. After a few minutes there was a phase where it required a retinal scan of 2 alpha-level members. Pierce understood why Nick was here, so he decided to appeal to conscience. If you do that, everyone will know what you really are. Pierce said so that Nat would stop deciphering for a second, so that Pierce could laugh inside. Are you ready for that to happen? The question here is if you are ready. Nat said to continue her work. At that moment a 2-colored armor came to her mind, and she looked out the window, and then she saw Issei in a difficult fight. I hope you get out of this okay, Issei. Nat said in a whisper. Issei was flying towards the helicopter. He spent his entire path taking down guards, which was not difficult for him. When he arrived at the systems chamber, there was James with his armor ready for battle. The final round. James went at full speed towards Issei, who did the same, activating the thrusters on his back, both ready with their fists to hit the other in the face. Boost 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 boost. Bragg increased his power to cause as much damage as possible. James foresaw that and increased his aura, giving more power to his blows. Both of them hit his face. Issei sent a punch to his stomach, which James blocked with his other hand. Issei took his hand away from James' face, intending to punch him in the stomach, which James saw and jumped back. Divide. Albion was doing his job and divided James' power. Both went against each other. The blows they gave each other were precise and deadly. James, in a moment of carelessness of Issei, took his hand and began to bend it to the opposite side. Then a shield hit James in the face, and Issei saw who it was. Steve. They both said. Issei took advantage of the distraction and took his arm out of James' grip. James grabbed his head and started screaming for him to see what he had done. After a few seconds James came to his senses and looked at Steve. Then Issei screamed. "Captain, I'll take care of him, you take the card," said Issei, throwing the card to Steve, who caught it. James heard that, then he went against Steve, but two chains had him by the hands, preventing him from moving forward. Then he saw Issei, who had a pair of chains made of pure magic with the infinity symbol everywhere. "Oh. No, your fight is with me," said Issei, throwing the chains towards him. James took advantage and gained momentum. He took several steps back and then used the chains to propel himself towards Issei at full speed, who avoided the blow because he reacted in time. Lightning plasma. Several rays came out of James' hand and hit Issei in the chest of the armor and sent him flying a few meters. The armor on the chest part. Destroyed, it was no longer there. What kind of technique is that? The armor regenerated instantly when Issei got up. Dragon Albion repaired it. Steve was fighting against James, who was dodging Steve's attacks, who was in his balance break. Two arms were holding the shield, and the other two were trying to hit James, but nothing, he just dodged and deflected them. Issei took out Ascalon and went against James. He charged energy in Ascalon, and it turned dark with green and red touches. Without realizing it, the armor on his hands turned dark orange. He went against James at incredible speed. Black sunshine. A large black cut appeared and left a large scratch on James' back, who turned around furiously and saw Issei with bloodthirsty eyes. Issei felt afraid, but it was not the right situation to feel it. Lightning plasma. Another beam hit Issei, but this one was in the face, sending him back. James took advantage and kicked him in the stomach, and a punch in the stomach that sent him out of the ship. "It was a good fight, but it was a hindrance," said James, to take out the claws of the armor and attack Steve with them. Well, he had both his arms on the shield, avoiding damaging him as little as possible. In the air, Issei did his best to stay in the air, but the thrusters were not working. Albion's wings were in terrible condition. He could not take off his wings, since he still had the armor in that area. Then he entered a place completely white, like snow, and in the middle of it, a man with white hair and red eyes wearing gold-colored armor. He felt Issei's presence and turned around. "Wow, I thought it would take you longer." "Issei," said the man. "Who are you and what am I doing here?" said Issei. "It's not time for you to know that yet, but help is already on the way," he said, closing his eyes. In the seventh heaven, a golden-colored armor began to react. Michael, Gabriel and Uriel, who were there, saw their father's armor move, and from one minute to the next, it disappeared in a flash of light. Michael smiled. It was about time he showed up. Then the same armor that was in the seventh heaven appeared in front of Issei, and he felt that his armor disappeared, and then he felt that another one covered him, and then he stopped falling. "You only have 5 minutes to use my armor, after that it's over. It will give you the necessary knowledge to use it," said a voice inside Issei's head. "Whoever you are, thank you," Issei said in his mind. Issei quickly flew towards Steve, who had several bruises on his face and was bleeding from one side of it. One eye was closed from being so swollen that he dropped his shield, and it fell into the sea. Divine shot. The ball of energy went towards James. It was white with red and blue touches on it. The sphere hit James and sent him flying several meters into the system's chamber. Divine boost. Issei's energy increased dramatically and quickly. He felt like he had been given 100 boosts, but it was only one. Inside Issei's mind, the two celestial dragons had their jaws on the ground, since Issei used the ELOHIM armor and used it as if it were nothing. "It was a good hit, I admit it now. Let's see what you're made of," said James to push Issei to the shield facilities that were below, and with a kick they both went down. The expansion wave did not take long to arrive, and the facilities were destroyed upon contact between the two. They both stood up and saw their opponent. They both went towards the other with the intention of attacking in the face, but the armor told Issei to move away, which he did. Lightning plasma. Issei dodged that attack by the skin of his teeth. Suddenly Ascalon appeared, but this was a new sword. It was white, and on the handle it had blue gems, and the hilt was black. It radiated a holy and powerful energy. "And to think that Hexentia was going to be so close to you," said the voice in Issei's mind. "Hexentia?" Issei asked. "This is getting weird." "Yes, that's not a sword, it's a spear whose ability is to change shape, according to the user's will. Think of another weapon," said the voice in Issei's mind. Issei thought of a pair of swords, then one more sword appeared. The other was black with red gems on the handle, and the hilt was white. Contrary to the other. "Well, you expect a fight?" said the voice as it settled into its spot. The second round for freedom, hate versus power. Lion versus dragon. Steve and Sam were on the missing helicarrier, both seeing the destruction that had been caused below due to the fall of Issei, and James had run out of options since the card Issei gave them was destroyed by James when Issei fell. They had no options left but to destroy the missing helicarrier, but how? Maria, you can make those two destroy each other, Sam said nervously. It's not possible, it has to be all three. Wait. Don't tell me you lost the card that S needed, said Maria over the communicator. It actually broke when we were fighting, Steve said just like Sam. When Fury finds out, they're going to be fried, Maria said seriously. Sammy Steve feared for his life for the first time. Issei and James had a fight of pure speed. It seems that the armor that Issei has gives him more speed. Issei fought with two swords and James with his claws. Lightning strike. Several fists came out from behind James and went against Issei. He blocked them, then the black sword became a shield, and Issei covered himself from the attacks. He charged energy in his white sword and slashed upwards from the sword. Several needles came out and went against James, who covered himself as best he could from the attack. Issei at high speed went against James and slashed with his sword and then crack. James' claws were destroyed as if nothing had happened. What kind of power does that sword have? Divine force. The sword split into 4 blades and they went against James, giving several scratches to the armor and to a certain extent to him. When it was finished the sword reformed. You have 2 minutes left, said the voice in Issei's head. Issei took note and went against James with a clean fist, who did the same since without his claws, he only had his fists left. They both went and hit each other in the face, then in the stomach and another in the ribs. There was no technique anymore, it was just a fight of pure power. Another hit in the face and the helmet of the armor of both disappeared. That mattered little to both of them. A blow to the chest and James saw everything he did wrong. I hope he can fix it. Issei hit James in the stomach, drawing blood. James did not stand by and kicked Issei in the chest, which Issei blocked with difficulty. Taking advantage of the fact that he had James' leg in his hands, he broke his leg with an elbow to the knee. James screamed in pain but was silenced by a punch to his face that sent him flying through some walls. Divine shot. The large white sphere went against James, who put his arms in an X position to withstand the attack, which he couldn't do, and flew unconscious a few meters away with his armor in a mess. He didn't fear the chest of the armor, his legs broken by the shot and the blows, his face bleeding, and one eye closed from how swollen it was. Armor off, said the voice in Issei's mind, so that the armor disappeared and showed Issei bleeding from the chest. He quickly used magic to heal his wounds. Once that was done he went to Steve and Sam. Inside the systems chamber Steve and Sam were looking for how to repair the damaged card. But they couldn't do anything, instead they damaged it further. Hell, what are we going to do now? Sam said, frustrated and angry. Damn. Steve said. What happened? Said Issei, arriving at the chamber. The card is broken and we can't do anything to fix it, Sam said. What? Issei said, clenching his fists. What if we use the Juggernaut overdrive? Said Albion. We would use the Long Ina Smasher, said Drake. Get out of here then go, said Issei, flying out of the ship. Come on Cap, Sam said as he took Steve by the hand and flew out of there. Lightning plasma. The technique of James that was on the ground raised his aura, then something unprecedented happened. James raised his power to the maximum, his armor changed and became blacker from his back. Several black tails came out. It was the opposite of the divine armor of the Golden Knights, it was the cursed armor of the Spectre of Leo. Sam's wings fell from the impact and they began to fly without propulsion. When they reached a height, Sam opened the parachute of his suit and fell with it on the tip of another nearby building. Issei, I'm out and that lion guy has another armor, Sam said through a communicator. Damn. I have a plan, Issei said, realizing something. He could use James to destroy the 3 helicarriers. What are you going to do, Issei? Drake asked him. Don't do what I think, Issei, said Albion, since he knew the boy. I have no choice, said Issei, flying. Silver Crimson Dragon. Drake and Albion gave him access to the strongest armor he has. James jumped in one go where Issei was and landed on his feet in front of him, who was surprised by James' new armor. How are you standing? Issei said incredulously. He recently broke both of his feet. Surprised, right? Said James. This is a cursed armor of Leo, the complete opposite of the divine armor of the 12 Golden Saints. In short, it is the final phase of the spectral armor of Leo. Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to talk or fight? Issei said, putting himself on guard. Well, I'll show you cursed armor at its finest, James said, doing the same as Issei. Cursed plasma. Black rays went against Issei and sent him flying backwards through several rooms and destroying them in the process. Issei got up somewhat sore but whole, his right arm. He couldn't feel it, then he saw that his arm was bent in the wrong direction. "Partner, please don't do it," said Drake on the verge of tears. He's not going to let his best friend go. "Issei, please don't do it, think better, there must be a way out," said Albion just like Drake. "There is no other way to do it, only this one," Issei said smiling. "There's always another way, think again," said Albion. Well, the same guy who sent him the golden armor that Issei used a few minutes ago was smiling. He was not wrong about him. From the depths of both sacred gears, a door with padlocks began to open, and a great glow appeared and blinded the entire place. The Pasteur saw this in astonishment, they had never seen anything like it. Then a chant began to be recited from the white-haired man to the Pasteur, as if they already knew him. Including Vali, who did it with a smile on his face that showed satisfaction. Two powers so contrary but so equal. Respond to the call of a new god. Defy evil and whatever stands in the way of my dreams. We will protect the weak from evil and death. Give us the strength today to end evil. And to shine like light in the darkness. God Gold Divine Armor. The dark orange armor covered Issei, then a voice other than Drake's, Albion or the other voice spoke in Issei's mind. "It's good to know that you are the chosen one. But let's not talk, but you have a few minutes with this armor, and by the way the other armors were eliminated, except the balance breaks and the Triatina, and the promotion to queen now. Fight," said a voice inside Issei's mind, but it sounded familiar to him. He didn't pay attention to the matter and raised his hand, and from there several infinity circles came out. Infinity swords. Purple swords came out from all the circles, which James blocked and deflected, but he received some causing the armor to crack, but it regenerated without problems. Once the swords were finished, James ran to Issei to give him a barrage of blows to the face, which Issei dodged and blocked and returned some. A sonic boom came out when Issei and James hit each other in the face. Neither of them cared and they continued their blows towards each other. Each blow that Issei did to James, the armor protected him and regenerated. He had no ideas it was like this, or he tried to get through that armor or destroy it, but nothing came to mind. "I can help you with that," said the voice. "Let me introduce myself. I am Dragon, the true celestial dragon. Drake and Albion are me, but separated by that none of their special abilities did anything to the other, because we are the same being. So any ideas, Dragon?" said Issei while hitting James in the face, sending him a few steps back. "I already told you, leave it to me," said the dragon seriously. "Penetrate." The red aura came out from all over the armor, and when Issei hit James in the stomach the armor stopped regenerating, and Issei took advantage and covered his hands in fire. James covered himself in air to put out the fire, which didn't work. Boost 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 boost. Another blow to the stomach knocked the wind out of Issei and sent him flying a few meters. They had almost destroyed the first one, only two were needed. Two wings came out from behind. They were like the divine dividing, but one pair were red with green crystals, and the other was white with blue crystals. Inverted dimension. Dragon's work gave him a technique so powerful that it would make the half dimension look like child's play. All things began to be destroyed, and with that the first helicarrier fell. Of course some pieces fell, leaving the city in terrible conditions. James jumped and went to the other helicarrier. Issei saw him and flew towards him, then Dragon spoke. "Partner, you have 10 minutes left for that to kill millions of people, so you better activate the bishop form and end this in one shot," Dragon said seriously, to which Issei nodded. James saw that Issei stood still and began to create several magic circles with the infinity logo on them, and several purple spheres came out of them. Issei saw the spheres then. Welsh Bishop Blaster. Issei's armor turned red again, then he charged power little by little. Boost 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 boost. Welsh Crimson Blaster. The great torrent of black, red and blue came out of the cannons and hit the helicarrier that was needed, and where James was both were destroyed. The engines failed, and Issei's armor disappeared and began to fall from so much power that he used. Two armors of great power plus a fight worthy of gods is no game. Issei began to fall, fell asleep. Dragon did everything possible to keep him in the air, but nothing worked. From his red armor, he took out the thrusters and from the white one the wings, and began to glide to avoid falling suddenly. Has just returned to life after several millennia and is not going to leave now. James was also falling and took Issei and put him on his back so that they would fall into the water, since he also needed his armor, which was destroyed by the great torrent of energy. "Thank you, Haidu Issei," said James as he fell into the water with Issei on his back. They both fell into the water with a big splash. Pieces of the ship were left in the air and began to fall. James did everything he could to get out of the lake where they were. Once he dragged Issei out of it and left him on the shore and left him to walk towards the nearest city. In Surzich's Lucifer's office, the great crimson demon Satan was in his office doing the damn paperwork. Sometimes he wants to go back to war just to not do it, but anyway, what's done is done. Suddenly his door opened, revealing Grafa and Kiba. "What can I help you with, Yudo-kun?" said the Devil King. Surzich's Sama, Issei Sama says that the raiding game with Ria's Sama will be postponed since she is on a mission, said Yudo. "Without further ado, I'm leaving," said Kiba as he walked out of there. Then Surzicha said to Grafa, "Grafa, tell DXD to get ready because at the next meeting I will challenge them to a raiding game, the Avengers vs DXD," said Surzicha, smiling in a psychopathic way that would make Chrysanthemum a child. As Surzicha's Sama ordered, Grafa said monotonously to leave there and inform the members of said group. Apparently demons fight for what they want, and what they want is. "Very soon, Dragon, you will be at my side as my slave," said Surzicha to continue with his paperwork. "I still don't know how, but because of the power I felt, Drag and Albion joined together again, it's only a matter of time," said Surzicha, signing an order to make Akeno a high class. "I just wait for him to do his job." Inside what was left of the shield building, inside the central building, Nat was publishing everything to the internet, since the mission was to expose and eliminate. Then a flash blinded them for moments, and where the Helicargers were before, there was nothing left. They had vanished, and they saw how the pieces fell into the nearby lake. "Wow. I did it," said Pierce, taking the phone and pressing a button so that Nat wouldn't feel anything since he had draconified the area where he was. Pierce was surprised, but I received a bullet from her, killing him instantly. "Romanov, are you ready?" Nick asked, looking at the screen. "Yes sir, it's ready," said Nat while giving him a moment to start uploading all the information to the internet. "You asked for it, Pierce," Nick said. "And everything that happened in Colombia." Nick then went with Nat and the other directors to the helicopter where Nick arrived. "Sir, Issei is lost," said Maria, who was already in the helicopter. "Searching for him couldn't have left him lost," Nick said while piloting the helicopter. "I'll look for it," said Nat as she changed into her normal clothes and took out her dragon wings, which were black with red accents. After a few minutes of flying, Nat saw Issei on the ground, bleeding and at the edge of the lake. She quickly went down to where he was and took him in her arms like a princess, and took him to the helicopter where Nick was, and Maria along with the other directors got on and left. Sam and Steve were inside too since they had not been found. They took him to a nearby hospital while they healed Issei as much as possible, but it was almost impossible. But Nat took a needle and sewed Issei's wound and stopped the bleeding for the moment. Haidu Issei the Sekiruyute and the Hariukua was in a hospital with his leg in a cast, and on his left hand, next to him were Nat, Steve and Sam in the room, Nat sitting next to the bed of this one who was asleep, with a bone in a cast. But he wasn't asleep, he was in his mind, in a large blank space where he had met that man that time, looking for some clue, but he found nothing. When he was about to wake up, the same man appeared in front of him, but he was wearing his golden armor, his white locks were coming out, and his red eyes were uncovered. Then he spoke with a hoarse voice. "Hello my heir," said the man looking at Issei. "Who are you?" Issei said while the man laughed. I am the god of Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Elohim, the biblical god." Elohim said now while Issei was in shock. "Calm down. I know what you say, that I'm dead and things like that, but it's not like that. In reality my body died, my soul is something else. I've been wandering for millennia, until I found a soul as pure and brave as I was when I was young," said Elohim with melancholy. "Taking advantage of the fact that you are here, I want you to explain the prophecy to me." "What did you mean by 6 great powers?" said Issei as he sat on the floor. "Well, you see, when the universe was created from the Big Bang, the explosion released 6 gems, each with a different color and power, which are the 6 things that every being wants, has and desires: mind, soul, time, space, power, reality. Those 6 gems, of course it only had 10% of its total power. The consciences of space and mind helped seal it in a powerful dimension, so that it would not leave there," said Elohim to Issei with his mouth to the ground. "According to us, Office and Great Red help you seal it, unless..." "It's not true," Issei said in astonishment. "That's right, Office and Red are reality and space. They do N''T like to be called that, so they gave themselves those names since they observed humans for a certain time, and when Red and Office discovered the dragons, I still remember their faces full of happiness, and Red used his power to become dragons, and thus the 2 dragon gods were born," said Elohim, taking off the helmet of his armor. "Well now, what did you mean by an existence so powerful that it should be banned?" "I don't understand," said Issei, holding his head in pain. "You see, I had a friend named Dragon. He was the first celestial dragon. Since he had the abilities of Albion and Drag, he was a beast in terms of power, but one day before the war one claimed the prophecy, and he was able to get me to kill him, and when I did, guess the result," said Elohim. Drake and Albion were born. That was the reason why Drake's fire did nothing to Albion and Albion's poison to Drake. Now everything makes sense, said Issei. Now you must know one thing but first. Then ELOHIM touched Issei's chest with an Issei and transferred all his power. Train my powers, and when you manage to get my powers of God Creator, the system of heaven will return to 100% and you will be able to hear the prayers of humans and you will not be able to fall. But only one thing could do it. Don't do anything perverted idiotic thing again, ELOHIM yelled angrily. Fine, but who is going to train me? Said Issei. Azrael, one of my sons, I entrusted him with this mission of training you, just go to the fourth heaven and you will find him there. ELOHIM said seriously, to which Issei nodded. Well, and the prophecy, when would it happen? Issei asked. Everything has its time, said ELOHIM before beginning to disappear. Before he forgets, Dragon wants to talk to you, for now he is asleep, so when he wakes up talk to him. And so the white space darkened, and then in a vision a purple man with light armor on was seen. He saw Issei and took him by the neck and whispered in his ear. Very soon everything you love, I will destroy it, said the being to throw him into the void. While he was screaming as he fell, he tried to get his wings out, but he couldn't. In reality, Issei woke up with a scream and woke up Nat, Steve and Sam, who were on guard, but when they saw Issei they calmed down. Issei was agitated and took a deep breath to get as much air as possible. A glass of water came into view, he took it and drank it. He analyzed where he was and saw that it was a hospital. Again he rolled his eyes in boredom. Steve had his arm in a cast, Nat only had some bandages on her chest, and Sam was the one who was fine since he had nothing, but Issei had his leg in a cast. Wow, I see you're finally awake, you gave us quite a scare, Issei, said Steve, smiling but in pain. How long was I asleep? Issei said, smiling nervously. A week, Nat hasn't left here, Sam said, pointing at Sam with his finger. Idiot, said Nat as she hit Issei on the head and left his hospital room. Go get her, said Steve, looking at Issei, who nodded and took a nearby wheelchair and went after Nat as best he could. When do you think they'll formalize their thing, Steve? Sam said, looking at Steve. Someday, Sam. Someday, Steve said with a smile. Nat was walking quickly because seeing Issei in that state affected her a lot, since she had never seen him with that magnitude of injuries. Even the doctors thought he had entered a vegetative state. Issei was a few steps behind and suddenly saw tears fall down Nat's face. She was crying. Thanks to his enhanced vision he could see it. He pushed the wheelchair with more force and speed. As best he could he reached her, and she noticed and stopped and faced Issei, who stopped and saw her face full of tears of frustration. While Issei was fighting, she was just sitting in a chair doing nothing, and that made her feel bad, since she only had bandages on her chest, and Issei had a purple face, one eye closed and his leg in a cast, the sacrifice in New York carrying the missile, and she looked like a burden, and that made her angry. Without warning, Issei got up and gave her a hug, giving her his chest, so she could cry and let off steam, which she did and cried for a few minutes. When she recovered, Issei heard a phrase come out of her mouth. Because you always sacrifice yourself and put others before yourself, Nat said in a whisper. Because if I don't do it, no one will, and I don't want anyone else to suffer what I've been through, said Issei, tightening his grip on Nat. But at the cost of your life, I wouldn't like to see you dead. I couldn't stand it, said Nat, hugging Issei tighter. Besides the fact that I love you and I prefer your happiness 1,000 times over mine. As long as I see you laugh, I'm going to laugh too, said Issei, lifting Nat's chin with his right hand. They both brought their lips closer and gave each other a soft kiss that they don't know how long it lasted, and they didn't care either. They both stopped and breathed heavily. Issei was blushing, and not to mention Nat, she was so red that she looked like a tomato. I love you too, Nat said nervously. She is still new to expressing her feelings towards other people. You are the reason to give everything of me until there is nothing left, said Issei. Let's go, I'm sure the others aren't waiting, said Nat, taking his hand and sitting him in the wheelchair so she could push the wheelchair. After a few minutes and trivial talk, Issei felt some familiar presences to him, where he only smiled once inside the room, got up and walked with Nat's help to the bed. And how is Fury's zombie? Issei said in a mocking tone. Better than the Sekiryukyu mummy, Fury said with a laugh. I have some news for you. In a week we were invited to a party in the underworld in honor of Issei, and they asked for the Avengers to attend, so you know you have a week. And by the way, Issei, Akeno's promotion is 2 days after that party in case you want to go, said Nick, giving Issei an invitation. How? Issei said, but received an answer from everyone except Sam. Don't ask, just accept, they said in unison. Okay, I better get ready, said Issei as he stood up and forcibly removed the cast and then bent his leg. Perfectly. What? Said Issei when he saw that everyone's mouths were on the floor. Ha 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 ha. You're full of surprises, kid, said Nick as he left. A week had already passed, and almost all the Avengers were gathered in a room, while Issei made a magic circle to go to the underworld. Tony, Bruce, Steve and Nat were already there. Thor would go with his father Odin, and Clint would go with Nick. Since as a representative he always has to have a bodyguard at his side. Issei was wearing a dark blue suit and a red tie and a white shirt with black sneakers. Steve was wearing a white suit and a black tie and sneakers of the same color. Tony was wearing a black suit and a red tie and black sneakers. Bruce was also wearing a suit, but it was brown, and had a black tie and sneakers of the same color, all dressed in a white shirt. Nat was wearing a black dress with a white skirt and a bow on the back of her head. She was next to Issei. Everyone was ready except Tony. He was bothering Steve, while the latter was thinking of hitting him in the face to shut him up. Bruce was drinking a little at the bar. The three of them had moved to Stark Tower under the portal that Loki opened a month and a half ago. Issei had not stopped doing his daily training. Dragon helped him from time to time. He had taken a little of the power of ELOHIM. Now he only masters 2%, and it is lethal, since he was hurt on more than one occasion. Well, the portal is ready, said Issei so that it glowed red. It was about time now I can meet the most coveted devils, said Tony with a perverted smile. Suddenly his phone vibrated and he saw a message. If you become unfaithful to me, you will lose what makes you a man. From your fiancé. Tony looked everywhere and saw several cameras in the room where they were. Let's go then, Bruce said as he headed towards the portal. Tony is wearing one of your armors, said Steve. Okay. Mark 5, come here. Tony ordered his armor and it turned into a red briefcase with silver details. The circle shone, causing everyone to cover their eyes, and when they opened them they were in a large room. There were noble demons everywhere, gods from different cultures. Then Surziches arrived with the other leaders to greet them. Welcome to the party in honor of Haidu Issei and his achievements against the Trahixa, said Surziches. Nice to see you again, Mao-sama, said Issei seriously. The pleasure is mine, Issei-kun, said Surziches. I would appreciate it if you would stop calling me since I am just an acquaintance, said Issei with his eyes closed. As you say, Issei-san, Surziches said. Not to be rude, but there's a party, right? Enjoy it, said Azazel with a glass of wine. Sensei, how is your left arm? Issei said mockingly. So how is your wife? Said Azazel. TSK. Fallen bachelor, Issei muttered. Well, let's stop fighting and go to the party, said Odin. The Nordic is right, enjoy the party, said Nick, making his presence felt. Sir, there are several infiltrators in the area. We have to be careful. I don't know what they're up to yet, said Clint next to Nick. Hello, Green Arrow, said Dragon in Drake's voice, holding back laughter. Who, this is the walking wallet speaking, Clint said with a vein in his forehead. Stop fighting, all three of you, please, said Michael when he saw that Drake and Clint were going to start a fight. Okay, let's go, Tony, don't go overboard with the drinks, said Steve when he saw that Tony had already stopped a waitress and taken all of her glasses. TSK. Boring, said Tony, letting go of the briefcase so it could turn into armor. Jarvis, analyze the traders and give me the report, Tony said, ordering the armor. As you command, Mr. Stark, said the armor as it flew away from there. Hey, you're the fallen one. Azazel, it's nice to meet you, said Tony, shaking his hand. I'm Tony Stark. Nice to meet you. Now I want to know what system you used to make that advanced communication interface, said Azazel. I created the Stark system when I was just a dreamy college student and it was actually an accident, but hey, hope for the best and then adapt to what you have, said Tony, and then the armor came back. Sir, there is no candidate for betrayal. Most of them are demons of yesteryear who believe that purebloods are the best, said Jarvis, returning to his briefcase form and for Tony to take it. Everyone went to the party. Bruce drank, Tony talked to Azazel, and Steve talked to Nat. Issei on his side was looking for Akeno, and when he found her, he saw her, but the little bit of heart he had was destroyed. Akeno was kissing a high-class man, and not in a gentle way, but one full of lust. She clenched her fist. She was about to take a life, but Dragon spoke. Stop, the fallen girl is controlled, commented the dragon. Most likely it is the current Lucifer or his younger sister, since I feel the power of destruction, but still, be careful. Issei reluctantly nodded and continued at the party. After a few hours, the party was over, but before leaving, the leaders made a proposal to Nick and Steve. Mr. Nick, what do you think about a duel between the Avengers and DXD? Said the Siskin. Why don't you just stop controlling the fallen hybrid? Tony said since Jarvis had detected mind control magic on Akeno. I control no one, Surziches said seriously but at the same time hiding his nervousness. He gave a quick glance at Issei and had his hair covering his eyes. Welsh Dragon balance break. The red armor covered Issei. Steve activated his balance break and caught Issei with his forearms. Tony put on his red armor and took Issei by the other hand. I'll tell you this once, Lucifer, either you free her or you say goodbye to all of DXD including your sister," Issei said with a sinister voice. Nick smiled and then spoke. "The duel will be in a week. If we win, you free the fallen, and if we lose we give you back Issei," Nick said, laughing. "See you next week then," said Rosseweise and the others to leave. From there, Bruce and Nat had arrived, Issei still wearing his red armor. Dragon did his best to activate the Juggernaut drive. After a few minutes, Issei began to calm down. Michael, who was still there, saw Issei's soul and felt his father's power, and he smiled. There was no one more worthy than him for the father's throne. Issei approached Michael, who was calm, waiting for him to arrive, and when that happened, Issei spoke to him. "Michael-sama, I need to talk to Azrael-sama," said Issei, looking at Michael. "Sure, let's go then," said Michael to make a magic circle towards the sky. He put a halo on Issei, and they reached the fourth heaven. Once there, everything was black. The only thing that could be seen were the stars of the place. Issei was impressed, since when they invaded the sky they went straight to the fifth heaven, and there was no time to take a tour. But now everything is calmer. Both began to walk. Issei did not separate from Michael, since he was afraid of taking a wrong step and falling. After a few minutes they both arrived at a cabin that was there. Then Michael entered, followed by Issei. When they entered, a black-haired man with white tips, one red eye and the other green, and behind him they had wings. The ones on the right side were golden, and the ones on the left were black like those of the fallen. This was Azrael, the angel of life and death. He saw his brother and the heir that his father chose and smiled. It was time. In a large castle in the main room there was a man with a monocle on his right eye, and he had in his hands Loki's scepter. Then a doctor approached him. "Her stalker worked," said the doctor, happy that after several months there was a result. "Do you know what the most terrifying thing about any doctor is?" asked the bald man. "No sir," said the doctor. "Doctor miracles are the most terrifying thing, and very soon the Avengers are going to fight against a miracle that is out of their league," said the man as he sat on his throne with a hand on his chin. "Very soon the Avengers are going to die," said the subject, laughing in a crazy way. Issei was in the fourth heaven with Michael and Azrael, the angel of death, in a small cabin that was nearby when Michael spoke. "Brother, Issei-san wants to tell you something," said Michael, and then left there and left them in privacy. "So hi to Issei, what do you want to tell me?" said Azrael, already knowing the reason for his visit. "I want you to train me," said Issei, bowing and kneeling on the ground. "Why do you want me to train you?" said Azrael. "To have enough power to protect the people I love, my friends, my family, and everything that matters," Issei said, so that his eyes shone with a spark of determination that Azrael came to see. "Fine, but I only had 20% of father's power, so then you'll have to train with Michael, since he was the only one who had 40% of his power, then you'll have to unlock the other 60% on your own," Azrael explained. Following that, Azrael and Issei left the cabin they were in and guided him to a part of the fourth heaven, where there was a white door. Once there, Azrael stopped and waited for Issei, since he was still a little scared. "Come in, when you cross that door your training will begin," Azrael commented, smiling. Upon crossing the door, Issei was temporarily blinded as it was a great glow. When he opened his eyes he saw himself in a white space. Then Azrael came up to him and said, "We are in my training dimension. Here father trained me, Lucifer and Michael," said Azrael, remembering those days when he was just a child. "Wow, that's great," Issei said. "And very soon it will be yours," said Azrael. "But well, let's distract ourselves. Now I will tell you how your training will work. The first 25 years will be hand-to-hand combat, then another 25 will be fighting with swords, spears, etc., but they will be made of light, and then that would be all. But don't worry, outside it will only be a week, and if you put your effort maybe we will get out sooner. It all depends on you," Azrael said when he saw Issei's shocked face. "Let's begin then," said Issei. 50 years of Issei's training with Azrael have passed, and to say that he had improved was too little to say. Azrael saw the boy's determination. He could now create weapons made of light. In hand-to-hand combat he was better than before. He only had to hone his skills, his senses and his perception of things. Now Issei had more defined muscles than before. His long red-tipped hair down to his waist, his eyes expressed maturity and seriousness. Issei could wear Elohim's armor for a limited time of 2 days. According to Elohim, who spoke to Issei from time to time, he was now at 20% of his power. When he was young, Issei could pull out 12 golden wings, which symbolized that he was a seraph of great power. Since only Michael had the 12 golden wings, Azrael went from being his teacher to being his friend and almost brother. In addition to all that training, Issei asked Azrael if he could teach him angelic magic, which he did with pleasure. During all those years, Issei was able to get along with Dragon, but the news that his friends were not coming back hurt him a little. But there was no problem in a casual chat with Dragon. Issei could handle both of Dragon's Juggernaut drives. He couldn't recreate his other armors, but he could make the Triatina with the Albion armor and the Queen, who called it Silver Dragon promotion. Once the training was over, they both left the room. Issei had not changed in appearance, as he was still the same teenager on the outside, but on the inside he was a 67-year-old person. In the room of the 12 Seraphim, they had a very important meeting since today would be the game of DxD versus the Avengers. Dulio was with them, then the system began to work at 30% of its power when father was alive. Miracles were done almost everywhere in the world, and those who asked for protection received it. Gabriel, who was serious. An expression of joy had filled her since father's heir had arrived and was apparently strong. Well, Issei, it's time to go to the underworld for the slaughter you're going to carry out, and by the way, I'll see if it takes me to any souls along the way, said Azrael, looking at Issei. Hahaha, they're going to be very surprised when they see my angel wings, said Issei. Not to mention that you're going to finish them in a few seconds. The dragon spoke inside him. Speaking of that, said Azrael, and then made several magic circles on Issei's body. When he finished, Issei felt with the 2% with which he had gone to train with Azrael. What did you do? Issei said seriously. I sealed you until the time of the prophecy, but until now you have 2% of your father's power, Azrael said as he walked. Well, I can still make lightsabers and stuff anyway, so that's enough for me, said Issei, resigning himself to the idea of having 30% of God's power. Well, it's time to go then, Azrael said, to make a direct portal to the underworld. When they arrived at the underworld, when they saw Azrael, they all knelt before him since he was almost like the supreme angel. It was said that he lived in the fourth heaven and that he neither spoke nor went out with anyone, and it turns out that now he was in front of them. Get up, he ordered with a cold face. Calm down, Azrael, they are just being respectful, Issei said to Azrael, who just snorted. Do you know what the best thing is about talking to the dead? Azrael said to Issei. Nope, Issei said, downplaying it. They don't respect you, they see you as an equal, well they kneel wherever I go, and that bothers me, Azrael explained. Well, I'm leaving, so take care of yourself and kick everyone's ass. Azrael whispered that last thing in Issei's ear, since he also knew what they had done to Issei, since he himself told him in great detail, meaning that when he realized it, he almost took some extra souls on his workday. When they separated, Issei went to the pre-game preparation room. There was Dr. Boehner with big shorts, for when he becomes Hulk. Nat and Steve were sitting. Clint was repairing his arrows and Sam. He was checking his wings and the bullets in his guns. And where is Tony? Issei asked. Stark has been missing for a week. The last we heard of him was that he threatened the Mandarin, Clint commented. Wow, that was one of Stark's stand-ups, Steve said, looking at his shield. Besides, his mansion was attacked by that guy and destroyed, and only Pepper was saved. There is no news of Tony, said Bruce. Pepper? Issei said curiously. Tony's fiancé, Nat said. Gentlemen, 5 minutes, said Clint, looking at his watch. We need more help, we won't be enough against them, said Sam. I'll help you with that, said Issei to make a magic circle, and from there came out 3 dragons. Hello, Dad, said the 3 dragons. My children, I need you to fight with us, you will be our support, so take your human forms, Issei said to the dragons. The 3 nodded and transformed into humans. Jack, who was the blue dragon, became a black-haired boy, and on his face, he had a blue mask with the eyes in black, and under them came out some red lines that looked like blood. He wore a black sweater with a hood, and the hood covered his face. Jeff, who was the white dragon, became a black-haired boy with black eyes, and wore a black hooded sweater, and had no eyelids or lips. The 3rd dragon became a faceless figure dressed in a jacket and a red tie. His face was white, without eyes, nose or mouth. He had nothing, only the white figure. Everyone's hair stood on end as they had 3 of the most famous creepypastas, Slenderman, AL's Jack and Jeff the Killer, and the fact that they were dragons made them even more dangerous. Don't worry, they're not the originals, they're just cosplays of them, all 3 of them like them, said Issei. Let's go then, said Steve, full of courage on the outside but very scared on the inside. Fine, I'll just change, Issei said to change. After a few minutes, Issei came out with a pair of tailored pants and a shirt, both black with red lines on the sides, and some sports shoes for greater mobility. The others had their suits from the fight in New York and, in Falcon's case, the fight at the old S.H.I.E.L.D. facilities. Once arriving at the place where the game would be, a circle transported them to the playing field, and it was a replica of New York. Of course it was intact. Falcon spread his wings, the Doctor transformed into Hulk, then Azazel's voice was heard on the playing field. Welcome to this confrontation of the anti-terrorist group DxD against the defenders of the Earth. The Avengers, the leader of the DxD team is Dulio Geseraldo, who will play the role of King, and of the Avengers will be Captain Steve Rogers. The duel will end once any of those mentioned falls, so they have 5 minutes to come up with a strategy, and may the best win, said Azazel. Captain, give the order, said Issei, looking at Steve. First of all, Falcon, you will go through the air, along with Issei, and you will do a tactical survey. Nat, you and I will be the decoy so that they come here and Hulk can attack them and take out whoever he can," said Steve. "I only ask one thing, leave me the boyfriends from my ex-harem." "That's right, the boys from Issei's ex-harem are demons, and let's just say that they're not going to have a very good time. Clint, anyone who passes Stark Tower, either you get them out of there or you bring them down." Steve said so everyone nodded. The game begins. Azazel's voice was heard everywhere. Cardinal Crimson promotion. The crimson armor covered Issei, and he spread his wings to fly with Sam. After a few minutes they saw the DXD group gathered in one place, but something gave Issei a bad feeling, then his senses told him to push Sam, which he did, and received the impact of a sphere of destruction, courtesy of Riaz. When he was falling, Sararog kicked him, which speeded up the impact. Falcon managed to get out of there to warn Steve. "Issei, entertain them, we're on our way," Steve said over the communicator, who just nodded. Issei analyzed his options while he was still on the ground inside the crater caused by the fall, and he only had one option left. "I hope they don't chase him later." Vanishing Dragon balance break. The white armor covered Issei. Sararog, who was nearby, was exalted since Issei was only the Sekiryuite, but being the Haryukyuo makes him twice as dangerous. Vanishing Dragon Knight. The armor thinned to give Issei more speed. On the wings a pair of turbines from which blue fire came out, and some marks all over the blue armor that made it look majestic. On the hands there were white claws, which also had blue fire. "Wow, I didn't think you wanted to end this quickly, Issei," said Azrael in the VIP room of the Angels. "Brother, did you know about this?" said Michael. "Of course, I helped him do that anyway," said Azrael. "Issei-san," Gabriel murmured, making her heart race. Issei launched himself with the intention of digging his claws into Sararog's armor, something that Sararog managed to dodge. He barely punched Issei in the face of the helmet, which he hit, but he was no longer there, where he went. "Hey Sararog," said Issei with a great torrent of blue fire above his head. Blue fire tornado. The large tornado of blue fire covered Sararog, which he managed to extinguish with a clap. Issei knew that Sararog had trained, but not to that level. Silver Dragon promotion. The silver armor covered Issei, but the fact that he is wearing this armor is Azrael's fault. If he only had 4% he would have already finished this with a flutter. The relentless Hulk wore green and was against Tobio Icus, the bearer of the Longinus Canis Lycaean. Tobio was in his balance break and was fighting Hulk. With a blow to Tobio's face, he destroyed his face and sent him flying through several buildings. Hulk grabbed him and threw him into the air and then jumped towards him and gave him a hammer blow that sent him to the ground and sent him unconscious. "Tobio Icus leaves the field," commented a scared Azazel. Hulk only thought one thing. This is the much acclaimed DXD, they are just children playing at being heroes. Even if they have stopped several invasions, they will never have enough power to confront them. He jumped and met Ria's entourage. He landed in front of them, and with one blow to each one he took them out of the game. Beija Argento, Zenobia Corda, Kaneko Toju, Akeno Himejima, you have been removed from the field of play. If Azazel was scared before, now he is scared shitless of what that thing can do to him. Steve and Nat were walking, but they ran into Volley's old group, minus Lefray and Kuroka. Since they didn't want to hurt Issei, there were only Arthur and Biku. Steve threw his shield to distract Arthur, which worked. Steve approached and hit him in the leg, which Arthur blocked with Caliburn. This expelled holy energy that sent Steve flying a few steps back. With one blow, he threw Steve's shield into the sky. Justice arms balance break. The four arms came out of Steve's back and he looked at Arthur and gave a smile. Nat had a fight against Biku. He used his staff to try to hit Nat, which she dodged. Suddenly, he launched a flame from his mouth and hit Biku, burning the hair on his face. Nat took Biku's staff and buried her claws in it to keep him trapped, which worked, and when Biku was distracted, Nat pulled him and sent him flying where Arthur was fighting Steve. Jeff, Jack and BX-27 were moving at high speed across the battlefield. Suddenly a spear passed close to their faces. Jeff, who assumed who it was, signaled the two to leave and advance, while he created a black sword with red touches, deflecting a thrust from Cao Cao, who smiled. "Finally someone interesting." "Who are you?" said Cao Cao with his spear on his shoulder. "That doesn't matter now. What matters now is to say one thing, and that is go to sleep," said Jeff with a touch of madness that would make Fred afraid. The sounds of metal were the only thing that could be heard in the warehouse where they were fighting. Dragon sword. The large number of swords came out of the ground and almost hit Cao Cao. He dodged them and invoked his balance break. 7 orbs came out of that spear, each one a different color. "You're the second one I've used this on, so feel honored," said Cao Cao. "Oh, shut up and die already, false hero," said Jeff, so that from his sword he created several black orbs. These went against Cao Cao with great speed. Each one exploded in a certain position that left Cao Cao temporarily blind. Then, when his blindness passed, he heard a voice that would make anyone's hair stand on end. "Go to sleep." said Jeff, stabbing the sword into the arm where he had the spear. Cao Cao crawled on the ground as he dropped his spear. Jeff took the spear, and it was turning black, and the tip turned purple. Jeff smiled. Even if it is only temporary, he will be able to have the true Longinus in his possession. The ha 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 ha. Jeff's deranged laughter could be heard throughout the warehouse, then the sound of something being pierced through the flesh was heard. Cao Cao retreats from the battlefield, said Azazel. The light covered the entire place and destroyed it. Above it was Dulio with his wings spread out and his hand raised as a sign that he had launched that attack. Jeff the Killer retreats from the battlefield. That news hit Issei's mind as he continued his fight with Sararog, who was still wearing his silver armor. Sararog created a sword of pure energy and wielded it. Issei took out Ascalon, and in the process, took out the sword that Azrael gave him in his training, which was called. "You really played Dawn of Light," Michael said, surprised. "Why not, it will soon belong to you anyway," said Azrael without giving it any importance. In the VIP room of the demons, everyone had their heads on the ground, since first it turned out that the Sekiryuite was also the Heryukyu, then the Green Beast took out Ria's entourage in one blow, and then Issei has Dawn of Light. Very soon, said Surziches, laughing like a lunatic. Issei was in his fight with Sararog, and to save energy he was in his promotion tonight, since this in exchange for speed takes little power from him. Issei knew that Sararog had trained, but he did not know that he could even do sword techniques. Issei took out the sword that Azrael gave him in his training, which was Dawn of Light, which has two edges. The black one that curses your soul and is given to you in the heart in addition to dying, it eliminates your soul, a white edge that purifies it, and if it stabs you in the heart, your soul is purified and reincarnated into someone else. Issei was fighting with the black edge of the sword. Deadly cut. The reddish blast hit Sararog in the chest of his armor. Issei changed the color of the edge to white and slashed Sararog's sword that destroyed it. What kind of weapon is that? Vanishing Dragon Rook. The thick white armor with the same markings as the previous one appeared, the wings disappeared, and on the arms the blue crystals were seen. From the holes in the mask came out blue fire that healed Issei's wounds. Both of them hit each other in the face, but the most affected by that was Sararog, who spat blood from the side of his face, and the mask broke in half, revealing his face full of bruises, and his face bleeding from the sides. His eyes were locked in one. He is not going to give up. Divide. Issei grabbed Sararog's face with both hands and kneed him in the face, drawing blood from his mouth, then a powerful blow to the chest sent him backwards, falling to the ground in the process, giving Issei room to change his armor one last time. Vanishing Dragon Blaster Demolition. The armor returned to its original thickness, and from it came out a pair of cannons on the arms, which were aimed at the Baal, who was getting up stunned by the blow since the force was devastating. Then he saw Issei's armor and smiled. So he defeated him again. In the same way as the first time. Once Issei gathered the energy necessary to shoot, he added light to his attack to generate more damage. "Goodbye, Haidu Issei," Sararog said, closing his eyes. Vanishing Blaster. The large torrent of blue energy went against Sararog at high speed. When it reached him, the explosion did not take long and destroyed the surrounding area in the process. Sararog Baal retreats from the battlefield. Slenderman was walking next to his brother Ael's Jack. They both walked until some tentacles stopped them. Slenderman already knew who he was. Both of them just raised their aura, and the ropes broke. From the darkness came out a black armor, with several tentacles on the back. He came walking slowly, but surely. It was Saji, who was already in his balance break, his armor black as night. Slenderman, although he could not be seen, was happy to be able to fight with a Dragon King. Moved his shoulders, and from there 12 tentacles came out and black fire manifested in his hands. In terms of power they were equal, or so he hopes. "Jack, I'll take care of it, you go get the phoenix," said Slenderman, snapping his fingers. "This is going to get interesting." In a quick movement, Saji threw several ropes to catch Slenderman, but it didn't work as he disappeared into the darkness of the place. A blow to the back from a tentacle sent him to the ground, and Slenderman just snorted. "You dishonor the title of Dragon King of the prison when you can't even hit me. You're pathetic," Slenderman said in Saji's ear. "At least I have a face," Saji said bravely. "Oh, that can be fixed," said Slenderman to use several of his tentacles to catch Saji. Suddenly a light covered them all on the field and everyone left except Issei. Nobody knew what had happened, but Issei had the feeling that it was not going to be pretty. From what was the battlefield now there was no one, there were only the buildings, the air currents could be heard, there was nothing at all from there. Suddenly a voice took him out of the frame. "Well, it's time to settle accounts. Dragon," said a menstruation hair with green eyes. "Why are you doing this, Surziches?" Issei asked. "Because I will become the god of this world," said Surziches. "And nothing will stop me." "Who would say that the great Crimson Mao is a traitor?" said Issei, putting himself on guard. "I don't care what you say, all I want is the power to rule the world, and peace is a means to that," said Surziches, taking off the top of his Mao suit. You know, it's been ages since I last used this, so give me a warm-up," said Rosseweise, causing a black medieval-style armor with red details in the center and all the articulated areas to appear in front of him. The armor covered him, and the aura coming out of it was easily a top 5. Issei knew that there was only one way to match his power. Issei also raised his aura, and the armor of God covered him, but it was still inside him. Then the seals on his body disappeared, and he felt all the sacred power of God in him. Then a voice spoke in his head. "It's not the time, but knock that idiot's teeth out. If he's God or his heir, he's going to beat the shit out of Lucifer or his imitator." Rosseweise displayed his 12 demon wings just to demonstrate the difference in power, but Issei was not far behind and took out 12 golden angel wings from the back of his golden armor. All the factions were watching what just happened. The Sekiryuite, who also ended up being the Heryukyo, was the heir of God. Shiva, Indra and Hades laughed in a funny way. As always, giving surprises even in death. In heaven, everything was a disaster. Their new leader appeared. He already had the armor of God in his possession and 12 angel wings. A certain brunette with pigtails ran her hands through her chest, knowing that the person she deceived would now be her leader. The classic battle of mythologies, angel versus demon. Both went against each other. Rosseweise wanted to hit the chest. Issei dodged it and hit Rosseweise in the face, who also dodged. Issei took flight with his angel wings and created 2 swords of light. Rosseweise, who was on the ground, also did the same, only with his power of destruction. Both slashed with their swords, but the swords of both stopped them. Issei had Dawn of Light and Ascalon in his hands. The exchange of swords was synonymous with suicide if you managed to get close. Issei kicked Rosseweise in the face, who dodged it by moving down. Both moved away from each other at least a few steps. Both charged their power for very powerful techniques. Demon extinction. Destruction swords. Behind Rosseweise several red swords, and behind Issei several spears of light, with inscriptions on the sides in Latin writing. Both launched their attacks on the other, since they could not defend themselves from them. The 2 techniques sent them flying a few meters back, destroying the buildings in their path. I recommend hand-to-hand combat and repowering of sacred energy in your body. ELOHIM spoke in Issei's mind. Divine boost. A strong wave of power came to Issei. A seal was placed on his body again, and he drew a deduction. He only has a limited time to have that 30%. But it doesn't take away the idea that we have to take advantage of the bug, so to speak. Issei did what ELOHIM said, and his body was filled with sacred energy. The light manifested in his armor, although it was in a medium state, since it had scratches everywhere. Issei's face had a scratch. That attack was deadly. Rosseweise got up from where he had fallen and noticed that on the right side of his armor in the abdomen area, there was a hole that went through his stomach. Suddenly he saw Issei approaching at high speed. Rosseweise got up and dodged a blow, but did not count on a kick that sent him to the sky, and he took out his instinct wings, but did not count on Issei coming flying towards him and hit him in the chest, destroying the armor in that area. But he did not care and grabbed Rosseweise by the mask and dragged him through some buildings, leaving them in ruins. Issei, being helped by Dragon, hit him in the most delicate areas. Issei saw the perforation of Rossewise's abdomen and how he held it and tried to cover it as much as he could. Issei inserted a spear of light into his abdomen. Rosseweise screamed in pain, but his scream was silenced by a blow to the face. In the demon room, everyone was angry because an angel was beating up their leader. The elders of the council were already making plans to compromise Hyodo Issei with 2 heiresses of their clans, which were Citri and Aegir's. 2 seals on Issei's body were replaced, leaving him with 10%. His armor was a mess. Rossewise's, not to mention that one, only had legs and arms and at the cost of the mask, but that one will fall apart at any second. Rosseweise took advantage of Issei's moment of hesitation and hit him in the face, sending him back a few meters. Issei put his hands in a cross to stop the advance of a kick coming from Rossewise's. Such was the force used in that kick, leaving a trail of drag. Issei stepped to the side to let Rossewise's pass by. Issei, taking a little break, spoke to Dragon, as he only has one chance to do that. Dragon. Magic energy state. Issei said. To use that we have at least a couple of minutes, since your body still would T be able to support that much load, said Issei's partner. Let's do it, said Issei as he put himself in a lotus flower position with his eyes closed, letting out his aura and the armor slowly disappearing to return to its place of origin in the 7th heaven. Issei was surrounded by a reddish aura with blue and white touches in his eyes, a symbol in each of them. When Issei opened his eyes, the symbol of Alpha and Omega was in each of his eyes. The top that Issei had was replaced by white pants with gold details, and he was not wearing a shirt or shoes, but the strength that this transformation had was to kill a. With a display of pure speed, Issei hit him in the chest, a knee to the abdomen and a punch to the face. Rosseweise covered himself in his power of destruction, but it had no effect. Issei passed him by as if nothing was happening. None of that was a problem for him. Yet. Rosseweise was getting up, but Issei passed by him whispering a few words. Divine explosion. Issei whispered to Surziches so that several magic circles formed around him and exploded, leaving Surziches without his armor. The black armor fell apart. It was completely destroyed since Surziches had no strength to continue using it, and also, it had to spend some time for it to repair itself, and now that nothing was left of it, it could not be rebuilt. Surziches, seeing that Issei was approaching, turned into his destruction mode, which consisted of white pants, with golden lines, 2 horns. Without his shirt and without shoes, his eyes turned red. He took out his sword, and Issei did the same, this being Ascalon. Issei ran to meet Surziches, which the aforementioned also did, both giving cuts with their swords. A shock wave appeared, both were fighting a sword duel. Issei gave a knee to Surziches that knocked the wind out of him, and made him throw his sword. Issei took advantage, and gave him a kick that sent him flying far away from there, going through several buildings in the area. Surziches got up with several scratches all over his body. "Surrender and you won't suffer the consequences," Issei said, holding his black sword. "I will never defeat you," said Surziches, getting up from the impact. "For you to have to use your fear of destruction, it is more than enough proof to say that you are cornered, so I will only tell you one more time. Surrender or you die," said Issei, pointing his black sword at the heart of this one. Surziches turned around to kick Issei, knocking the wind out of him and sending him flying. Surziches took advantage and went against Issei with Ascalon and stabbed him in the lung, near the heart area. Issei felt his lungs asking for air, but for some reason they weren't getting any air. Issei felt like he couldn't take it anymore. Surziches gave him several cuts on his body, which Issei received. Issei escaped from Surziches and hid in a nearby building. Surziches began to look for Issei. He is not going to last forever. And even if he doesn't like one of the two, he has to die. Issei hid in the Stark Tower, and if everything was custom made, there is a reactor on the ground floor, and if he puts the necessary energy he could make it explode and create a distraction. Once thinking that, Issei instinctively touched his chest and noticed that he was bleeding. Quickly he put a seal on himself to prevent bleeding. Another seal on Issei's body was put back on. And with that he took 5% of the power that he now has. According to his calculations, he only has 3% left to finish off Surziches, and this transformation consumes too much energy as he has at least about 10 minutes. Once down at Stark Tower, Issei saw the arc reactor and brought out the boosted gear to transfer a couple of boosts. When he did that, the reactor started to glow and Issei started to run out of the building. Once outside the building, the reactor exploded and destroyed the nearby area. Surziches started to approach the area, and when that happened, Divine Judge. The white blast went against Surziches, which he dodged, but did not count on Issei to fight against him, since he covered himself in light, so that Ascalon would not do him so much damage. He gave him several punches in the abdomen, in the face, in the ribs. Issei gave him a powerful blow to the face that made him release Ascalon and sent him back. Issei saw his sword buried in the ground and left it there. Surziches, who recovered from the blow, got up and went against Issei at full speed, both with their fists raised towards the other's face. Their blows hit and drew blood from the side of Issei's face. Issei moved away, but a kick from Surziches sent him close to Ascalon, and when he got up, Issei took Ascalon and began to attack Surziches, but it did not take long to release the sword, since all the seals were finished placing on his body. In a quick movement, Surziches made Issei drop his sword and throw him to the ground to get on top of him. Surziches caught Ascalon and held it around Issei's neck, who was holding it with his hands. "We were once brothers," said Surziches, straining harder. "We once were," Issei said, kicking Surziches in the stomach. He got up but released Ascalon. Issei, turning quickly, removed his arm with a single cut, to the surprise of many. Surziches tried to get closer, but couldn't, since Issei cut off his head, turning quickly, killing Surziches, leaving him decapitated, his bleeding body, headless, lying on the ground while his clothes reappeared. Issei knew that this would have repercussions, but he tried to kill him and only defended himself. "Did you forget who I am?" said Issei, putting away his sword. The place began to fall apart. Issei took Surziches' head and his body, so as not to leave him there, and to give a message. His transformation ended. He took out his dragon wings and left that dimension. He appeared in the living room of the Gremory mansion, where several guards appeared. Issei released Surziches' body and activated his white armor. Vanishing Dragon Balance Break. Vanishing Dragon Knight. The light armor appeared. In one turn the guards fell to the ground dead. Issei continued on his way. With the white armor, he continued killing guards, until he reached the main hall of the Gremory castle, where Riaz and the others were already healed. Dravel and Irina, who had arrived to talk to their new leader. Issei arrived and kicked the door, so that the patriarchs could see their decapitated son. Issei threw the body, and the head rolled until it reached in front of both patriarchs, who screamed. Riaz knelt down, seeing that her brother, a powerful top 10, had died, and now that place belonged to Issei. Lord Gremory, who had recovered from what just happened, raised his power to the limit, as he was now going to beat Issei up, but before Lord Gremory attacked him, Issei spoke. If you're going to do something to me, think twice, since your son betrayed the underworld, and with that the alliance only advanced the trial process. Issei said coldly. Issei turned around and was leaving, but a pair of hands stopped him. These were Rina and Ravel who were going to pull with him. Issei sighed and took out Dawn of Light and Ascalon, and put them on the neck of both, which were surprised and shed tears. Issei knew that this trick of fake sadness was not going to work with him. We talked in heaven, Arena-san, said Issei, seriously leaving the place. Azrael, the angel of life and death, had a soul in his hands, and to be more specific, that of the recently murdered man. It was white but had purple touches. Something didn't fit. Why the sudden change in attitude? He almost looked like a red-haired Rezemvan. None of that made sense. There was only one thing left to do. Investigate further into that. In another part of the world, a blue-eyed brunette was sitting on her throne. She looked like a goddess since there were several people kneeling around her. Suddenly a ball of power that she gave to one of her spies returned, and this was the imitator of Surzich's Lucifer. Since the original had been kidnapped after the Trahixa War, as best they could, they copied his destructive gifts and transformations based on his blood. They already found the brat, said the serious woman. No, my lady, she is still missing. The last time we found her was in Kuo and 200 of our people were killed, said a soldier. Well, I'll take care of it then, said the woman with a funny smile. Somewhere in Greece. The same brunette was sitting on her throne and prepared to walk until she reached some cells at the bottom of her castle. Once there, she saw the door that had traces of decay and had several holes. Inside it a redeed with green eyes, chained hand and foot, shirtless, his torso full of scars, his face full of blood, his pants dirty and torn, only covering his private parts, along with two girls, a redeed and a silver-haired girl, both handcuffed like him. One was Riaz and her tower Rosseweise, both were kidnapped and were replaced. Ross and Riaz had a lost look, and how could they not have it if those who kidnapped them have shown them videos where they deceived their Issei, since in reality they, like several, were replaced, like Surzich's, have used their blood to make clones to follow the orders of their goddess. Nix, said Surzich's, tired and full of wounds. Now Sir Chan can speak Fufufu, said the one now identified as Nix. Let us go or you'll face the consequences, Riaz said, still broken inside. Or what? Her boyfriend is coming to beat me up, said Nix. What she did to her brother is worse. Then Nix played the video of the fight with Surzich's and Issei, leaving Surzich's amazed at the great skill of his clone. I wonder what would happen if Issei finds out the truth, Ra said bravely, knowing that the love of his life will come for her. He will find us, and when he does, you will know that the fury of a celestial dragon is not to be trifled with, Riaz said seriously, as did Surzich's. Oh. I'll be prepared when he comes here, until I get what I want, said Nix, taking out a sword with Samuel's blood. Hades knows how to negotiate. But that phrase he left everyone in shock. Hades is also involved in this. After Issei left the body of Surzich's Lucifer who had betrayed them, he felt a premonition that something very big was about to happen. At this moment, Issei was heading to the VIP room of the angels because he wants to talk to Michael about something that concerns the other seraphim. He still had his white armor covered in blood. He felt that something was going to happen, but he still didn't want to be too confident. Once outside the Gremory mansion, he changed his armor to a knight's and flew away at full speed to where Michael was. Nick, Steve, Sam, Clint, Bruce, Jack, Jeff, Slenderman were there waiting. Jeff had one arm in a cast because the blow that Dulio sent to them was strong. Everyone was talking to each other. Nick saw Issei and saw that he was wearing his white armor. DXD was in a corner of the room in fear. When Issei entered, everyone was paralyzed with fear because he killed a top 10. The old men of the council were furious, not only because they killed their political figure, but because the one who killed him is the pillar of the fractions, and they could do nothing against him. Even if they wanted to, they would end up dead, in the worst possible way. Azrael approached Issei and said something in his ear that made him serious. A great aura of death was felt throughout the place, but it was not directed at anyone in the room, but at one person. That bastard is going to pay for this, said Issei, deactivating his white armor. We have to go, said Michael, already knowing Issei's reason, who nodded. Everyone go to Stark Tower, take Akeno and Sona, I'll talk to them later, said Issei, to which the others nodded. Jack, Jeff, and Slenderman went home since 3 dragons in heat are the worst in moods, and they get excited when they see their human form. Sam, Nick, Clint, Nat, Steve, Bruce, Akeno and Sona left the place through a magic circle that Sona and Nat created, leaving only Issei, Michael, Azrael and the DXD group, with Arena who had just arrived. Issei saw her and sighed again. He has to do this faster to avoid problems. We're leaving, including you, Arena, Issei said seriously, so that Michael and Azrael disappeared in rings of light. Issei and Arena did so in particles. In the 6th heaven, Issei, Arena, Michael and Azrael have just arrived. Uriel, Mestima, Gabriel, Amenabiel, Raphael were on guard, but when they saw who they were, they relaxed. They were all identical to Michael, blonde and green eyes, except Amenabiel, who is black and bald. "Brother, we were about to start a meeting," said Amenabiel. "Now Amenabiel, we have to deal with a more important issue than how to open Father's room. We know that all 12 seraphim should be there, but only half are here," said Azrael. "Everyone sit down," said Issei, letting out his angel wings, leaving everyone silent knowing the position of this. "Well, what do you want to talk about, Issei?" said Mestima. "There are imitations of several people, clones to be precise, thanks to the technology that shall be used," said Issei. "They have been killing and replacing several of us, Serzerches, Lucifer, and several more," said Azrael. "And how do you know that?" asked Uriel. "Because I am the angel of life and death, and every soul passes through me to send it to the fourth heaven or to Hades," said Azrael, sticking out his chest in pride. "But replacing a leader, since when has it been possible?" said Michael. "Possibly since the war against the Trahixa," said Gabriel. "You're right, as I recall he disappeared and was later found on the island of Amadip in Nicaragua, under the excuse of being on vacation," said Raphael with a finger on his chin. "Azrael, any idea who it could be?" said Uriel. "No, but his soul had traces of a god. I haven't identified which one yet, but I'm sure of one thing," said Azrael. "Whoever it is, this is going to get ugly." "Azrael is right, we must be prepared," said Issei. "Michael, you will continue to be in charge of heaven. It is not yet time for you to ascend to the throne. Azrael investigates who that power belongs to. Gabriel, stay alert. You are in charge of the legions of angels, and Arena here present will be your right hand. Mestima, you will help Amenabiel and Azrael to seek the power of that god." Issei's term of speech. Everyone nodded, and they were not going to deny it either. Arena was in shock, since the person who betrayed her was giving her the highest rank, only passed by the seraphim. Issei had plans for Arena since he still has to do something. "Michael, where did you have the sacred gears, ELOHIM?" said Issei. "In his room in 7th heaven," said Michael, turning his head to the side. "Well, I need to do something," Issei said, to go to said room. Already in the 7th heaven, Issei opened the door and saw several sacred gear projects, several Longinus prototypes. Issei remembered what he was coming to, a black wing with purple crystals somewhat similar to the divine dividing. It was where she was. She still had several lines of magic outside of her. She was supported by cables that gave her energy. Vanishing dragon balance break. Issei activated the white armor and took out a piece of one of the gems from his leg. Issei sat in the chair in front of the wing and began to work on it. He started by cutting the main wiring except the power source. Without that, the room explodes, along with him. He rebuilt the wiring since there were several faults. He installed a synchronization system with the user of this new Longinus and the soul that he plans to enclose but does not have yet, unless. Issei went down from the room to go to Azrael. There he opened the door, and Azrael was surprised because Issei looked sweaty. "Azrael? Vali's soul. Where is it?" Issei said, panting. "He is in Hades. He was a demon soul. He couldn't decide. He already had his place there," said Azrael. "But we can go get her. Old Hades owes me a favor," said Azrael. "Let's go then," said Issei, already recovered. They both disappeared, leaving a ring of light where they were. Suddenly, on the throne of Hades, next to him, a woman with purple hair and purple eyes and a spear in her right hand, next to her two brothers. Twins, one of them blonde and the other black hair, both with a pentagram in the middle of their forehead. Both were with a flute, and the woman was with a harp playing in synchrony. The pair of rings of light appeared, and from there came out Issei and Azrael, both with a halo above their heads. The three of them stood on guard, but Hades, upon seeing who it was, made a signal with his hand, and the three of them lowered their guard, as their lord had asked them to. "Hello Azrael, what brings you to my humble and decadent castle?" said Hades, settling into his chair. "Nothing, I just want Vali Lucifer's soul," said Azrael, looking at Hades. "What do you want the soul of that hybrid demon for?" said Hades. "Because I want it, I'm going to use it in a project I'm doing," Issei said seriously. "The heir of ELOHIM, you know how funny it is that he hated the dragons for what they did to him, but for one of them to be the heir to his throne is stupid," Hades said, mocking Issei. "Hades, I ask you to respect my leader and give me Vali's soul," said Azrael. "Thanatos brings the soul of Vali Lucifer, he is in the Halicios fields," said Hades. "As you command, master," said the blonde, and went to said fields. After a few minutes, the blonde had already returned from said fields and was carrying a silver sphere with black touches. This was the soul of Vali Lucifer. The blonde gave the sphere to Issei, who took it with a nostalgic smile. "His old friend is here. I hope that the favor I owed you is settled with this, Azrael," said Hades, so that the aforementioned would nod. From 1 minute to the next, both of them disappeared again in particles of light, leaving Hades smiling. With that, his plan was already in motion. Already back in the 7th heaven, Issei appeared and saw the wings that he had created. Reinvented a gem in the center of them of blue color. Issei, who brought the soul of Vali, inserted it in the gem, and it shone. A few seconds later, the two wings began to flicker from a purple to a bright black color. From one moment to another the wings stopped shining, and then a voice was heard in that room. "Where am I? What is this place?" said a voice in the wings. "Hello, old friend," said Issei, looking at the wings. "Issei, what is this place?" Vali asked from his wings. "We are in 7th heaven," said Issei. "Vali, what is the last thing you remember?" "I was falling, bleeding, and I heard Albion's voice. I remember that I saved Lavina from a Trahexa death, then that beast pierced my heart, then I fell to the ground and just closed my eyes, and now I am here with you," said Vali. "But why don't I feel my body?" said Vali. "You are sealed in a sacred gear that I invented, because according to reports there is a problem with a god, and I need all the help possible," said Issei. "What god?" said Vali. "We still don't know why this suit will bring you back to life, and I myself will look for your wearer," said Issei. "Well, what functions do I have and what is my classification?" said Vali. Issei proceeded to tell her about her functions and classification. Vali, upon learning that she was a Longinus, was overcome with anger. Vali's sacred abilities were two. 1. The wings had a function similar to that of Albion, since they divided her power and made it her own. The second ability was to penetrate barriers, depending on the strength of the bearer. Once that was done, the wings glowed and disappeared from Issei's sight. Apparently Vali found a worthy bearer for his power. In one place, a white-haired woman of at least 19 years old who was sleeping in bed, a black sphere entered her, and instantly her mind went black, and from there several blue flames covered her. A person, a man of perhaps the same age as her, appeared in front of her. "Wake up, we have a mission, partner," said Vali. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" said the girl. "It's rude to ask someone's name without first giving yours," said Vali angrily. "My name is Elena," said the white-haired girl. "My name is Vali Lucifer, heir of the original Lucifer, and you are my first carrier, so don't disappoint me. We have to help my best friend," Vali said seriously. "So wake up, think about the most powerful thing you've ever seen, and I will reveal myself to you, but not like this," Vali said. Issei watched this with a smile, since it's not every day you see your friend with a girl. "I just hope you've chosen well, Vali," said Issei coming out of the sky. At Stark Tower everyone was desperate since Issei had been here for 2 days. Surely things took longer than expected. The magic circle appeared in the room where they were, and Issei came out with a smile, as if he had left behind a burden that had weighed him down for years. "Hello," Issei said simply. A burst of black color went towards Issei. It was Akeno, who felt terrible because she had cheated on him with another person. She had betrayed his trust. And she did not deserve to be with him. "Akeno, look at me," Issei said seriously. Akeno doubtfully looked at his face again. Issei saw those violet eyes that she liked so much. There was no betrayal. There was no hate or anything. There was only love and guilt. Love for Issei and guilt for having betrayed him. Issei took her by the chin and brought their faces closer until their lips met in a single kiss. Akeno was not crying from sadness, she was crying from happiness, knowing that the person she loves is not going to abandon her because of a stupid mistake. The kiss ended and Issei hugged Akeno. He didn't want to let her go, and he wouldn't let anything separate them either. But since the universe likes to screw with couples. "Issei," a voice was heard in a sinister manner. "How about we go to the beach?" said Tony, who was talking to Bruce. "Sure, why not?" Steve said. "A break would do us good." "Well, we'll leave on Thursday, I still have things to do," said Tony. "Hey Toothless, come here," said Tony. "As you say, Tin Man," said Issei with a vein in his forehead. Issei went after Tony. The latter decided to remain silent so as not to cause a disturbance outside a room. Tony stopped and spoke. "Issei, I found someone you might be interested in," Tony said. When he opened the door he saw the purple-haired girl singing in the park. But Issei didn't hear anything from her after that. She fled at the time of the fight. "His name is Ingvald Leviathan," Tony finished saying. "I found her wandering around the parks, humming a song, and I decided to bring her back," said Tony. And so Tony proceeded to tell Issei what Ingvald told him, that she had spent her entire life in Grigori, but she was asleep, and only one day she woke up and Azazel let her go, but then she began to be sought by several demons, also that she was half-human like Vali, possessor of a sacred gear. Dragon, who had heard the story, began to look for a sacred gear energy, and when he found it he was surprised because he had a Longinus in process. "I still don't know what sacred gear he carries," said Tony, tired and crossing his arms. "An Arid Kiri," Dragon spoke out loud. "A rising Longinus capable of controlling water and a song capable of putting dragons under her command, regardless of their category or power, even office. And hence the idea of going to the beach so she can release. you know how to release tension," said Tony. "Talk to her for a while and I'll go calm your ladies down." And so Tony left the room, leaving Issei and Ingvild alone. When Issei was going to speak, Ingvild stopped him. "Thank you," said Ingvild, looking into Issei's eyes. "Why?" Issei said, tilting his head. "For saving me from those demons," she said. "You're welcome," said Issei. "But why were they looking for you?" "So I am a half-human, daughter of the original Leviathan, with a powerful sacred gear to dominate dragons," she said, looking at the ground. "A few years before the war, I was just a girl, playing with my father and my uncles Lucifer and Beelzebub. They didn't care that I was half-human, I was a demon to them, and they weren't going to change that. After that, the war came to us. I was already old enough to go fight, but I fell asleep. When I woke up in a place where there are fallen angels, I thought about attacking, but someone with white hair and blood-red eyes came and helped me calm down. Then he asked me why I had woken up after at least 100 years of being asleep. Then he told me about the war and about the death of my father and uncles and my grandfather. Then I decided to travel the world, and well, I met you in that park and you saved me from those demons, that's why." "Thank you," said Ingvild, shedding tears of pain as she told the whole story. And it was not strange that Issei was surprised. If Lucifer was proud of his blood and more of the demons, maybe he was never like that. Maybe what happened to Ingvild was the trigger, since the sacred gear were products of God and the fallen were those who took care of what ELOHIM created. ELOHIM inside Issei was listening to that story, and he knew Lucifer's reasons for becoming a demon. He only wanted to be the father of something. He did everything, and when he fell, he got angry because he wanted to create a race, a lineage, and when that moment came, he called it the race of demons. But apparently the girl's dream detonated the war by the demons. Lucifer fought for the well-being of the girl. Now he regrets having murdered his own son. A tear came out of the eyes of both Issei and ELOHIM. That story would hurt anyone. One day sleep as if nothing and wake up 100 years later, not knowing that they all died in a senseless war. Issei hugged Ingvild to her surprise, but she did not deny the hug and returned it and began to cry on her shoulder. Azrael along with Uriel and Mestima were looking for the energy that Surziches or his clone had, and when they found it, everyone fell silent. That woman always hated her father, and now she's coming against Issei. The situation will get wild. Issei, after leaving the room with Ingvild, received the beating of his life. Even if he wanted to defend himself, he was tied with whips, and his brute strength was not enough to break those chains. Bruce, Tony, Steve, Sam left like a soul that the devil takes them. Sona and Nat tortured him for a couple of hours. If it were not for the presence of Ingvild, her mini-me does not count. She proceeded to introduce herself. Of course, seeing the scared face of everyone when they found out that she was a mixed-blood Leviathan was priceless. Seeing Steve faint. The days passed. Issei, Sona and Akeno strengthened their relationship. Akeno slept with him and Sona well. She confessed her love to Issei, and Issei had a friendly chat with Akeno, and after all, Issei now had 3 partners, Akeno being the main one. Nat and Sona slept together, but Akeno's rape attempts weren't at all cute, let's say, but there was nothing that Steve and more than submission could solve. Nick disappeared just like that after Cersei's murder. Maria entered Stark Enterprises and is now Tony's secretary. Issei taught Ingvild in the afternoons about human culture, what had happened for 100 years. Ingvild, as a thank you, taught him how to speak the demonic language. They spent afternoons full of laughter. Everything was happiness, and Thursday arrived. Everyone was getting ready to leave. Issei was wearing shorts with closed sandals and a sleeveless shirt. Nat was wearing a 2-piece bikini with a beach skirt covering from the waist down. Sona was wearing a 1-piece suit with shorts and a hat, along with her essential glasses. Akeno had a 2-piece white suit, and over it a red shirt that Issei recognized instantly. Yes, Akeno put on her immortal and powerful red shirt that she wore at the academy and shorts. The 3 of them had beach sandals. Ingvild was wearing a purple one, but was wearing a beach dress and sunglasses. Tony, Sam, Bruce and Steve had shorts of red, gray, green and blue respectively, and a black shirt each. Of course it was ultra tight on Steve. Tony cursed the fate of that experiment, and maybe he can reopen it. "Well, are you ready?" said Tony, putting on his armor. "The last one to arrive at the beach invites us to dinner," said Tony as he flew out of there. "Tony, what beach is it?" said Steve. "Malibu," Tony said. "Are we going?" said Issei with a magic circle in his right hand. "Yes, let's go," said Sam. Everyone nodded, and in a flash they appeared on the beach. Already at the entrance they waited for Tony, who arrived after a few minutes. When he got down he took off his armor, and seeing his idiotic face caused everyone to laugh, since when he asked them how they got there so fast they only gave one thing. "Magic." Yes, that was the group response. I wasn't expecting that," said Tony, falling defeated, knowing that he was going to have to pay for dinner tonight. Already on the beach, several women were admiring Issei, Tony, and Steve, since one was a millionaire, and the other 2 were handsome beyond belief, since a heterochrony is not seen so often. The men were silent when they saw the beauties that came with them, but there was nothing that the death aura of a dragon couldn't cure. Upon reaching the right place, everyone took their things and sat down. Issei forgot about his servants and called them on the phone. That WhatsApp update is more useful than before. Tiba, Ryu, Zero, Gasper, do you want to come to the beach? Said Issei to receive a yes over the phone. Well, we are on Malibu Beach. After a few minutes they arrived. It was clear that Kiba arrived with his partner, although he looked tired, and Tsubaki looked happy. Although she was limping. Issei connected those dots and laughed devilishly and said, "Wow, when am I going to be an uncle?" Issei said simply. Kiba and Tsubaki just blushed since it was apparently obvious that they were dating, and as a couple they did that. Although it doesn't help at all that Tsubaki wants to try new positions that leave the knight tired. Gasper arrived after a few minutes, along with Valerie. Gasper was wearing a men's suit and Valerie a one-piece bikini. Ryu and Zero were arriving, but they were running as fast as possible to catch the traitor who abandoned them at the mercy of those women. "Come here, you damn!" shouted the Meat brothers. "Stop both of you and tell me what happened so you can come running," said Issei with an outstretched hand. "You see, we went to spy on the women in the locker rooms and we ordered the rag to keep watch and he left us frozen with his bats so that those women would attack us," said Zero, looking at the traitor with hatred. "Something to say in your defense, Gasper," said Issei looking at the aforementioned. "If Valerie was in those locker rooms," said Gasper seriously. "Something very strange in him. They deserve it, and if they continue being perverts they will never get a girlfriend," Issei said wisely. Ara, look who's talking, the one who obtained power through women's oppi," Akeno said mockingly behind Issei's back. "TSK. But still, I'm not asking you to change, but to moderate yourself," said Issei, already resigned. "Stop talking about tits and have fun," Steve said in defense of Issei. In the background everyone nodded. Issei took off the shirt he was wearing, revealing a green dragon tattoo on his entire back, leaving everyone surprised since no one knew about the tattoo. "And that tattoo, Issei?" Sona asked him, putting her hand on his back, caressing the dragon's head. "According to Dragon, the tattoo appears once when I have too much power in my body. It manifests itself in the form of a tattoo. Of course I choose where it appears and the form it takes," said Issei, entering the water with Sona. Of course a wave hit them both. Sona almost fell, but Issei caught her in time and stuck her to him so she wouldn't fall into the water. Sona blushed, because even though they are a couple they had never been so close. "Don't be afraid, just let the water flow," Issei said in her ear. Sona closed her eyes and let the sea move her. The sensation gave her something she had not felt in several years of being in the human world. Freedom. Freedom to love and be loved, to fight and protect what you want, to protect your ideals. On the shore of the beach the others were playing volleyball since there was nothing to do. Of course that game should be illegal, since they were talking about magic powers and super strength. Tony and Bruce got out of there. Sam was making sand castles in peace. Ingvild was on the shore of the beach watching the tide take away the sand from the sea. Issei saw her and it seemed to him that he had never been to the sea. Sona, seeing Issei's face, knew what she was trying to do and gave him a kiss on the cheek that he didn't expect and said in his ear, "Go get her, but you will give me a reward at night," said Sona, giving him a kiss on the lips since Issei was in shock and let himself be dominated by Sona. After that phrase that melted Issei's brain, he went to Ingvild, who looked sad, and it hurt him without knowing why. He saw that she was silently watching the tide, how it came and went. Issei extended his hand towards her, who looked at him in confusion. Issei motioned for her to come with him to the sea, which she hesitated for a few seconds, but then took Issei's hand and they entered the sea. Sona had already left and watched Issei's interaction with Ingvild with a smile. Akeno and Nat did the same and decided to do one thing. "Let's have a barbecue," said Tony, with everything in a thermos, even the charcoal. "And the fire," said Sam. "That's fixed. Hey toothbrush, come here," Tony called to Issei. Issei didn't give a damn about being called that and ignored Tony, who already had everything ready. Kiba approached the grill and invoked a small magic circle, and from there came out a fire that began to consume the charcoal. After several hours, Issei and Ingvild came out of the sea and saw Tony cooking, Nat and Steve helping him, and Sam playing with Kiba throwing the ball. Asper and Valerie were making sand castles, but it was too big. Zero and Ryu were running like children on the beach. Akeno and Sona were reading a book. Everything was peaceful. The day had already ended. Everyone was getting ready to leave. The silver was empty and it was night, but something was not right, and almost everyone knew it except Gasper, who had left with Valerie before the barbecue. "But what do we have here? The heir of ELOHIM," said a black-haired woman emerging from the darkness. "Who are you?" said Tony, putting on his armor. "I'm just Nyx, the goddess of the night, and why am I here? Simple. I want her," said Nyx, pointing at Ingvild. "You're not taking her," Steve said, taking out his shield. Even if you could, we would defeat you one way or another. Bru said, starting to turn green. And we're not going to let you get away with it, said the Miak brothers, activating their balance breaks. Besides, you are outnumbered, give up. You are alone, said Kiba, creating a sword. And who said I was alone? Nick said with a smile. Suddenly several magic circles appeared, and from there came out several high and supreme class demons, due to the aura they released. Nat, Tsubaki and Sona, take Ingvald, Tony by air, Hulk you and I will take care of the demons. Sam help Tony. Steve ordered. Hiba, Ryu, Zero help Steve and Hulk, Akeno burn the wretches who come near you and dare to touch you. Issei ordered his servants and fiancé. Welsh Dragon balance break. Issei activated his armor and went against Nyx at high speed. Nyx was waiting for him. Issei raised his fist to hit him in the stomach, which worked, but he had black armor covering his body. The mask only revealed his purple eyes. Ingvald had left with Sona and Nat. Several demons launched themselves against all those below. Hulk killed them with a soft blow. Zero used his lightsaber to kill them with one blow. Ryu used yellow armor with several spikes and killed them with one blow. Akeno, her mere presence burned several demons, and a sadistic smile made her look like a Issei was in his duel with Nyx in the air. Both were fighting for victory and were not going to accept defeat. Nyx and Issei threw a punch in the face of both, which hit them both. Both threw punches at the other without stopping defending themselves. Issei pushed himself back and then went forward, kicking Nyx in the face, which propelled Issei upwards. Being in the sky, he threw several daggers of light towards Nyx, since light and darkness are weak to them. Nyx dodged one or two daggers, but she received the rest head-on, making her move back a few meters. Wow, the rumors about you are true, Nyx said, wiping a thread of blood from the side of her mouth. You flatter me, but we have to end this, Issei said seriously. I agree with you, Bakemono, said Nyx, putting herself on guard. Both of them went against each other again at high speed in the sky, and only red and black flashes were seen going from one side to the other. Down on Earth things had ended. Dr. Boehner was already normal. Several demon bodies were there. Zero was burning them with his sacred gear of light, making them disappear. Nyx, seeing the numerical disadvantage, cursed under her breath for not hiring mercenaries to help her with the job. With one blow, she moved away from Issei and stopped attacking. I'll leave, but keep this in mind. Darkness always finds light, said Nyx, disappearing from there. Let's go. When I finally had a day off, they came to look for us, said Issei, coming down without his armor. The dragon draws power. You were hoping to live your life in peace, said Tony in his armor. You know, let's go, just in case he comes back or goes to Stark Tower, said Steve. They all went through the magic circle and arrived at the Stark Tower. When they were at the entrance, a white-haired girl with green eyes was flying above with a pair of purple wings that Issei recognized. Issei invoked the divine dividing and flew until he was next to her. When he arrived above, the purple wings spoke. We are here as I promised, old friend, said a voice from the wings. I knew you were coming, but not so soon. Vali, Issei said to the wings. You are lucky that my carrier lives in this country. Besides, I see great potential in her, just as Albion saw in me, said Vali. Vali, who is he? Said the white-haired girl. He is Haidu Issei, the current overlord of heaven, and the Sekiryuite and the Haryukyo at the same time, said Vali. So you are Haidu Issei. Please train me, Elena begged in the air. What do you say, Vali? Should we give him training in the biblical god style? Said Issei with a smile that made the white-haired girl tremble in fear. Elena, what awaits you from now on? Said Vali, feigning compassion. Why not better in the dragon god style? It was official. Elena was dead and she didn't like Issei's smile at all. Issei motioned for them to go down to Stark Tower, which they both did. What is the name of your carrier, Vali? Said Issei, walking into the room. Elena. Goch, said Vali. Dragon, tell me it's a lie, Issei said to his tenant. You're right, but he's from Groch of Drag, but from a family that was in charge of serving Drag, and consequently his last name went to them, said Dragon. Well, tomorrow begins your training to reach your balance break, said Issei. Then to master the small gift that I gave to your sacred gear and the power of Vali, not the one to divide and penetrate, but the power of the heir of the demon king Lucifer, but for that you have to become half demon and half human. Hey Toothless, what's that girl? Said Tony, knowing that Troy is going to burn. She is the first bearer of the king demon wings, Longinus, that I invented, not like a certain person who invents useless armor, said Issei, looking at Tony mockingly. At least I didn't get my millions from a boob show, Tony said, raising an eyebrow. And you're jealous that you can't see or touch them because Pepper castrates you, said Issei, smiling like a winner, watching Tony, who was paralyzed, stammering things like damn Toothless, you're going to pay for this, and so on. And Ingvald? Issei asked. He's in his room resting. He said he was sleepy and went to sleep, said Sona, approaching Issei to give him a kiss. Nad is in our room waiting for us to sleep, Akeno said to do the same as Sona. Well then. Have a good night and may I bless you. Said Issei, being pulled by his girlfriends by the collar of his shirt. You know, even though a few minutes ago we faced a god-class being, Issei has a lot of energy. Sam said, taking his bags to leave. Well, thanks for coming and I'm sorry it ended in a fight. Said Tony, saying goodbye to everyone. Hey. Mr. Stark, can we sleep here? Said Kiba, Ryu, Zero and Elena. Sure, there are several rooms downstairs, take one and that's it. Tony said with a smile. Tomorrow was going to be another day and a very easy one for some and for others well. Not so much. While in the Gremory mansion, the goddess Nyx was in the chair of the patriarch of said mansion waiting for him. What do you want, Nyx? Said the Gremory patriarch seriously. I want you to start moving or else your beautiful daughter will pay for your incompetence. Said Nyx, taking out a hologram showing Ria's with blood on her body. It's not enough for you to blackmail me, but you also kidnapped my daughter and now you want me to start a hunt against Haidu Issei. Said the Gremory patriarch. You are despicable, you are a heartless being. Said Zeordicus, raising his power to the maximum. Of course I have one, but what you call a heart is not that valve that pumps blood, but for you it is what drives you to be better every day. Said Nyx, starting to leave. And remember. If you don't do what I say, your daughter will pay. Nyx said with a smile. I just hope Haidu Issei kills you because if he doesn't, I will. Zeordicus said seriously. It was already morning, the birds were singing, and the sun was full of energy. For our silver hair with reddish tips and heterochromatic eyes, he woke up from a long sleep and got up to look for breakfast. Since he was very hungry, he went to the kitchen, and his entire entourage was there, Ingvild and Elena, everyone was eating with Tony and Steve who were present. Good morning, Issei. Said Tony with his typical smile. Good morning, everyone. Said Issei, heading to the refrigerator in search of food. There's food in the pan if you're going to have breakfast. Steve said while drinking coffee. Issei went and took the entire pan and a spoon and ate it all without leaving any traces that there was food. Kiba laughed seeing his friend act that way. Ryu and Zero had their mouths on the floor and Gasper, not to mention this one, looked at him in more than disbelief. What? I have something on my face. Said Issei, seeing how everyone looked at him strangely. Just a pan of food, Issei-sensei. Elena said with a poker face. Oh. That's not true at all, Kiba. Said Issei, looking at the aforementioned who stopped laughing and turned blue. I still don't know how you ate the academy buffet and were still hungry. Kiba said as he remembered that day. No one eats that much food. Well, a magician never reveals his secrets, Issei said with a wink. Issei-sensei, shall we start my training? Elena said, getting up from her chair. Sure, just let me change. Said Issei, walking towards his room. And when will they give him the news? Said Ingvild excitedly as she would learn more about the outside world. When he returns from training it will be the best way to tell him. Tony said. I still don't believe you're the chemistry teacher. Steve said. Come on, who better to teach chemistry than a weapons engineer? Said Tony. At least you got the job as sports teacher. Nat will be the language teacher and Bruce the psychologist. Said Steve. So it's true that the Avengers are going to be teachers at the Kuo Academy? Gasper said. Of course, the representatives of the other factions are also there, why not the humans? Said Tony. I just hope you don't go too far with the students or I'll tell Pepper. Steve said as he left the room. Come on, you're boring, rekindle the flame copy palette. Said Tony, coming out behind Steve. Stop calling me can opener. Steve said to Tony. I feel like our life will be more exciting from now on. Elena said. Don't even say it, partner. Besides, I want to see how much my ex-rival has grown. Said volley from Elena's hand. Well, I'm here. Said Issei, arriving in his typical fighting clothes. Okay, let's go. Said Elena, walking behind Issei. Volley, how long can Elena handle your wings? Issei asked, going out to the roof of the building. A couple of hours. Said Volley. Well then let's work on that. Said Issei, taking out his wings. Follow me. If you can. Then Issei jumped off the building and took out his wings to fly. Elena swallowed hard and did the same as Issei and went after him. Issei made sharp turns through the city that Elena could barely execute. Issei at one point put away his wings and let himself fall. He turned into a ball. He was spinning until he reached the ground. Elena went after him at her maximum speed to catch him, but Issei took out his dragon wings and the crimson thrusters and went faster than before. Now he seemed like a missile. Elena was several meters behind him, since she could barely keep up with him before. Now it was impossible. Come on, don't give up, keep going. Said Volley. It's difficult. Elena said, panting. Issei and I have to face more difficult things for you to get tired in just one practice flight, so get up and fly. Said Volley in a harsh but at the same time understanding way. Issei saw Volley's interaction with Elena and could only think one thing. You would have been a good father, Vali. Too bad you circa and apostrophe tc your son. Issei thought since he knew that Vali had a girlfriend. From the mouth of the same he told him that they had already done that and that he felt a familiar energy, but at the same time unknown to him, all that happened before the Trahixa, Albion made fun of him, since he would not have realized if it were not because he joined the dots and let himself go for happiness. Happiness that did not last long, since after a few months after he died, his son was born, a half-demon of Lucifer's blood and half-human from his mother's side, Lavina. Lavina Renai. Come on, come here, said Issei with his arms crossed. No. I'm going to give up, said Elena, spreading her wings larger than normal. Issei knew it, and that was better than nothing. Demon wing second revelation. Elena's wings were larger and had a jewel in the center of her back that was blue. Issei spread his wings once more and went forward, and what he saw left him surprised, since Elena was next to him, and next to her an image of Vali, who was also seen making the effort to keep up with Issei. Issei smiled as the synchronization system he installed worked perfectly. Issei increased the speed of things, and with his 12 angel wings and 4 dragon wings, he went faster, leaving the city, taking Elena to the outskirts of the city. Elena was surprised since she didn't think she had that many wings, but she still wasn't going to give up. She gave a sonic boom and followed Issei closely. They went heel to heel. Issei smiled. This girl has potential. Already outside the city, Issei was in a green field. He was with his arms crossed on the ground, watching as Elena panted heavily, lying on the ground. It was clear that she couldn't keep up, since after a few minutes, Elena was several meters behind him, with the exception of being able to remain standing, and when she touched the ground she fell down panting. Come on, that was only 1% of my current speed, said Issei, shaking Elena's hand to get up. It's just that. He's a leader. From heaven, said Elena, still panting. Not yet, I'm not ready for the position yet, but even so you are slow. In a real battle you would be dead, and that is what we are going to fix now, said Issei, activating his boosted gear and divine dividing. I will prepare, I will attack you with 10% of my power, so I hope you resist. With that, he launched himself at Elena in a flash. Elena instinctively turned around, dodging Issei's blow, but when Issei passed by, he touched her. Divide. Issei reduced Elena's energy by half. Issei stood guard against Ascalon. Elena didn't have a sword, but she had her fists. Suddenly a sword of light appeared in front of her. She took it and stood on guard, as did Issei. Both of them went against each other, giving deadly cuts, at least Issei, who was testing Elena to know what to train and how to train. The cut on the arm that drew a trickle of blood from Elena, but the problem was that a wide energy passed from the blade of the sword to her, and that made her nervous. Issei spread his wings and went against Elena with more force than before. He tried to hit her in the stomach, which Elena dodged. Issei crouched down and kicked her in the stomach and sent her flying. Issei put away his sword and spoke. It was time to tell the truth. You have potential. But it's wasted, you only concentrate on dodging. I gave you several openings when I attacked, and you didn't take advantage of any of them. Your reaction speed is good, but it's not enough. Issei criticizes seriously. That's enough for today. We continue tomorrow, said Issei, starting to fly. Issei. How is my son? Vali asked with a worried voice. She's a daughter, Vali, and she's a beauty. I inherit your eyes and manners, said Issei, remembering the time he went to Lavina. Can I go see her? Said Vali, surprising Elena. Of course we will go, Vali. A father's duty is to see his daughter, said Elena with a sad smile. Thank you, said Vali. Well, if we want to see Lavina and Arashi we have to take a 2-hour flight, said Issei, taking out his divine to fly faster. Let's go then, said Vali seriously. Elena also became serious. They both took out their wings and took flight. A couple of hours later they had arrived at Kuo, in a small house, suitable for a family of at least 4 people. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.